Chapter 1320. Faced with Chen Shidao's inquiry, Yang Kai only explained that Chen Yu was an old acquaintance of his and didn't go into too much detail. Even if Chen Shidao was suspicious, she wasn't stupid enough to get to the bottom of this. On the other hand, Yang Yangyun's pair of beautiful eyes stared at Chen Yu thoughtfully, her heart filled with suspicion. Chen Shidao and the others didn't know the details of Yang Kai, but Yang Yangyun couldn't be clearer. Yang Kai came from the outside world and wasn't a native of Shadowed Star, but now an old acquaintance of his had appeared. Could it be that this First Order Saint King woman also came from the outside world? Chen Shidao hadn't expected that Chen Yu not only came from the outside world, but also came from the same place as Yang Kai. After the host and guests took their seats, Chen Shidao immediately began asking Chen Fanlei where he had gone and why he hadn't returned yet. Chen Fanlei's face flushed red as he turned a pleading look towards Yang Kai, not knowing how to explain. He couldn't tell his big sister that he had nothing better to do at night and had gone to visit a brothel with Yang Kai, right? On top of that, he was the one who had brought Yang Kai there, so if he really said that, he wouldn't be scolded afterwards. Seeing Chen Fanlei's awkward look, Chen Shidao seemed to have guessed something and turned to look at Yang Kai with a smile. "Little brother Yang, where did you and Fanlei go last night? Why do I smell a strange scent of rouge?" Yang Kai glanced over at Chen Fanlei and saw him winking at him, smiling bitterly and saying, "Brother Chen, if nothing had happened tonight, I wouldn't have said anything, but with so many things happening tonight, it's probably impossible to conceal them, so please tell me the truth." Hearing this, Chen Fanlei immediately became dejected. After a moment of hesitation, he gritted his teeth and began to recount the events of the night. After hearing that the two of them had really gone to that kind of brothel, Chen Shidao's pretty face became so cold it was as if a layer of frost could be scraped from it, but when she heard that there were so many twists and turns to this matter, and that Wang Yuhan was involved, she couldn't help feeling shocked. After listening to Yang Kai talk about the hidden dangers of the dual cultivation secret art to a cultivator, her beautiful face couldn't help turning pale as she hurriedly asked, "Fanlei, you didn't really?" Chen Fanlei quickly waved his hand. No, thanks to Brother Yang's warning in advance. I only had a brief conversation with that girl about life. Other than that, nothing else happened." Hearing this, Lu Ying couldn't help giggling, and even the annoyed and worried Chen Shidao couldn't help smiling. After entering that kind of brothel and paying the money, not only did he not take any substantial action, he even dragged a woman to talk about life. Perhaps only Chen Fanlei would do such a thing, and the woman accompanying Chen Fanlei was probably also confused. However, because of this, Chen Shidao finally relaxed. After pondering for a moment, her beautiful eyes filled with anger. So, the reason why Fanlei went to that kind of place was because of Wang Yuhan's unintentional words. And little brother Yang was just pulled along by Fanlei to give him some courage. Whether it was unintentional or not, I don't know, but he went to Joyous Union Pavilion one step ahead of me and targeted me at every turn, hindering me from doing what I wanted to do, Yang Kai said lightly. Chen Shidao's expression changed slightly as she thought about it. Wang Yuhan should understand Fanlei's temperament very well and know what to say at what time and how it will affect Fanlei. It seems that his ultimate goal is little brother Yang, and Fanlei is just a springboard. Hateful, in order to deal with little brother Yang, he actually doesn't care about Fanlei's future. Where is the image of a brother? If he really succeeds this time, wouldn't Fanlei be unable to take another step forward in the future? Wang Yuhan's actions this time seemed to have really touched Chen Shidao's reverse scale, causing her to become extremely annoyed, her eyes flashing a cold light. "Fanlei, don't have any dealings with this kind of person in the future. After returning to Extreme Path Sect, you must report this matter to your master." "Ah, I must report to master, then about entering Joyous Union Pavilion." Chen Fanlei suddenly hesitated. "Naturally, you must tell him everything. What's wrong? You don't want to? If you don't want to, I'll go to Extreme Path Sect myself." Chen Shidao glared at him and shouted. Chen Fanlei didn't dare to refute and immediately nodded obediently. He believed that after this incident, even if Wang Yuhan wasn't afraid of being expelled from Extreme Path Sect, he would still be severely punished, and the former was more likely. Chen Shidao remained silent for a while before suddenly remembering something and calming her anger. She politely bowed to Yang Kai and said, This time, it was all thanks to little brother Yang, otherwise, Fan Lei would not have known he had been caught in a trap. This mistress offers her thanks. Yang Kai waved his hand and said, I'm afraid I've implicated brother Chen in this matter. It's not his fault. Ian, now that things have gotten to this point, there's nothing more to say, but I do have one more thing to tell Sister Chen. What is it? Little brother Yang, there's no harm in asking. Yang Kai flipped his hand and took out something that looked like a piece of dead wood. It was completely charred black and had no aura or smell, as if it was just a piece of dead wood that could be found anywhere. Does Sister Chen recognize this thing? Yang Kai asked. This is. Chen Shidao frowned and looked at it hesitantly, seemingly unable to recognize it for a while. Oh, is this beast drawing incense? Chen Fan Lei called out in surprise. It seems that brother Chen has some understanding of this thing, so he should also know where it came from, right? Yang Kai looked at him. Ian, brother Wang and I used this thing before to lure out a monster beast that was good at concealing itself. This thing is very useful, as long as it is lit, it can attract a nearby monster beast. Moreover, it is colorless and odorless, so our cultivator can't detect its aura, Chen Shidao explained. It turns out that brother Yang also has this beast drawing incense, but it seems to have burned out already. Where did brother Yang get it? Grand Burial Valley, next to the Thunder Pond. Yang Kai smiled lightly. Chen Fan Lei's expression froze for a moment while a thoughtful look flashed across Chen Shidao's beautiful eyes before her expression changed drastically as she stared at Yang Kai in amazement. Actually, I didn't find this thing, it was Yang Yun who found it. When he was collecting the thunder liquid, he accidentally found it. If it weren't for Yang Yun's deep understanding of strange things, I'm afraid he would have missed it. Yang Kai handed the beast drawing incense to Chen Shidao before turning to Chen Fan Lei and asking, Brother Chen, it's not that I want to measure the heart of a gentleman with my own petty heart, but dare I ask if your brother Wang has been to the Thunder Pond before? Little brother Yang means. Chen Shidao's phoenix eyes narrowed. Sister Chen already knows, so why bother asking? Yang Kai smiled lightly. Chen Shidao gently nodded before turning to Chen Fan Lei and asking, Fan Lei, has Wang Yuhan been to the Thunder Pond before? Ian, he has been there before. A few years ago, he accompanied another brother there. That brother cultivated the same secret technique as me and also broke through with the help of the Thunder Pond, so when I was about to break through this time, brother Wang proposed to go there. Chen Fan Lei scratched his head and asked in confusion, What's wrong? Is there a problem? Chen Shidao ground her teeth and said coldly, Wang Yuhan, it seems that the last time we were in danger in the Thunder Pond was also his doing. Impossible. Chen Fan Lei exclaimed, why would brother Wang do such a thing? On top of that, if it weren't for brother Yang arriving in time, I'm afraid he would have lost his life. Chen Shidao shook her head, I don't know the specifics, but if my guess is correct, when Wang Yuhan went to the Thunder Pond a few years ago, he should have discovered the Silver Night Thunder Beast, but at that time, it should have only been an 8th order beast. As you can see, the Silver Night Thunder Beast broke through to the 9th order not long ago. This was something Wang Yuhan did not expect, so he even put himself in danger. As for why he did this, probably because he wanted to create a dangerous situation and take advantage of the opportunity to save the beauty and win her heart. Yang Kai chuckled and finished Chen Shidao's sentence. Chen Shidao blushed and glared at Yang Kai, but she did not deny it, apparently agreeing with Yang Kai's guess. Chen Fan Lei heard this and wore a look of shock, muttering to himself, how could brother Wang be such a person? The crisis in the Thunder Pond and the changes in Joyous Union Pavilion were all related to Wang Yuhan, making Chen Fan Lei unable to accept this for a while. Fan Lei, you haven't seen much of the world yet, so it's understandable that you can't recognize people clearly. In the future, you just need to be more vigilant. This time, you met a noble like little brother Yang who saved you from danger several times, but next time, you may not be so lucky, Chen Shidao said earnestly. Chen Fan Lei nodded subconsciously. While she was teaching Chen Fan Lei, Yang Kai stood silently to the side. In fact, he had not intended to expose the matter of the beast drawing incense from the beginning. After all, although Wang Yuhan had used some tricks, he was still pursuing a beautiful woman, so there was no need for him to ruin things. However, tonight's events had made him extremely uncomfortable, so naturally, he wouldn't be polite to Wang Yuhan. He didn't mind stepping on this kind of petty villain a few more times. After such an incident, Chen Shidao was no longer in the mood to remain, so she immediately took Lu Ying and Chen Fanlei out of Floating Flower Snowmoon Pavilion and returned to her own residence. Looking at her appearance, it seemed she intended to teach Chen Fanlei a good lesson. After they left, Yang Kai turned to Chen Yu and said, "You rest here for 2 days, after that, you can leave with us." Then, he introduced Yang Yang and Chen Yu to each other. When they learned that Chen Yu actually came from the same world as Yang Kai, Yang Yang was taken aback, but for some reason, his attitude towards Chen Shidao was neither cold nor warm, but when facing Chen Yu, a woman he had just met, he became more enthusiastic, returning to his room with her as if he had a lot to say to her. Chen Yu also wanted to ask about Yang Kai's situation, so naturally, she didn't refuse. After everyone was done, Yang Kai returned to his room to rest alone. Over the next 2 days, Yang Kai stayed inside Floating Flower Snowmoon Pavilion, and after these 2 days of getting along, the relationship between Chen Yu and Yang Yang seemed to have become much more harmonious. At noon on the 3rd day, a maid from Flying Spirit Palace came to report that Chen Shidao and the others had arrived. Yang Kai was shocked when he heard this and released his divine sense, calling out to Chen Yu and Yang Yang before heading downstairs. Chapter 1321. Sure enough, Chen Shidao brought good news. The Origin Returning Realm Senior Chen Fanlei knew had returned on time last night, and when Chen Fanlei went to ask him this morning, the other party had agreed without any hesitation. Now that everything in Black Crow City's space array had been prepared, Yang Kai could leave for Heavenly Fate City at any time. Even the cost of using the space array for Yang Kai's group of 3 was paid by Chen Fanlei. Yang Kai was not surprised by this. After all, the Chen family siblings were people who knew how to repay kindness. A trivial amount of Saint Crystals was nothing to them, so Yang Kai did not act politely and immediately called out to Yang Inflammation and Chen Yu before following Chen Shidao to the location of Black Crow City's space array. Every city's space array was heavily guarded by experts, and Black Raven City was no exception to this rule. When they entered the main hall where the space array was located, Yang Kai immediately noticed the auras of at least 4 Origin Returning Realm cultivators hiding nearby. Next to the space array, a middle-aged man dressed like a scholar was talking to Chen Fanlei, a warm smile on his face as he nodded slightly from time to time, seemingly having a good relationship with Chen Fanlei. Yang Kai immediately knew that this middle-aged scholar was the senior the Chen family siblings had mentioned. Seeing Yang Kai and the others arrive, Chen Fanlei excused himself from the middle-aged scholar and quickly greeted them with a smile. "Brother Yang, I have not failed to live up to your expectations. Everything has been prepared." "Many thanks, Brother Chen." Yang Kai cupped his fists politely before following Chen Fanlei to the space array. Chen Fanlei pointed to the middle-aged scholar and said, "This is Senior Jiang Wenjie. He was able to use the space array so easily this time. It was also Senior Jiang who helped us." "Many thanks, Senior Jiang." Yang Kai gently nodded to the middle-aged scholar. The other party swept his eyes over Yang Kai for a moment before smiling lightly. Sure enough, heroes come from the young. Nephew Yang doesn't look very old, but just like Nephew Chen, you are already a second-order Saint King. In the future, your future will be limitless. Jiang Wenjie had only said this out of respect for Chen Fanlei's face. He didn't have a deep friendship with Yang Kai, but since the other party had praised him so highly, Yang Kai naturally had to act humble. Shortly after, Jiang Wenjie ordered someone to open the space array. After Yang Kai bid farewell to the Chen siblings, he led Yang Inflammation and Chen Yu into the space array. In the next moment, the space array shone brightly, and space force fluctuations rippled out. Just as the figures of Yang Kai and the other 2 blurred, Jiang Wenjie suddenly looked at Yang Kai. His lips moved. A light flashed in Yang Kai's eyes. He didn't have time to ask anything before a slight dizziness enveloped him. On the other side, on a space array many tens of thousands of kilometers away from Black Crow City, Yang Kai's trio appeared. Yang Kai cultivated the Tao of space, so this kind of long-distance transmission wasn't too taxing for him. He could even use this kind of transmission to comprehend the mysteries of the Tao of space. However, whether it was Yang Inflammation or Chen Yu, Neither of them could accomplish this feat as easily as Yang Kai. After a single transmission, both of them felt dizzy, but it wasn't a big problem. Circulating their Saint Chi slightly, they dispelled the discomfort in their minds. Turning his head and looking around, Yang Inflammation's expression became confused while Chen Yu asked in surprise, "Is this the Heavenly Fate City you mentioned? Why is there no one here? This isn't Heavenly Fate City." Yang Kai's face sank as he finally understood what Jiang Wenjie meant when he sent him a divine sense message at the last moment, telling him to be careful along the way. Looking around, although this place was also a large hall with a space array at their feet, it was very dilapidated. Clearly, this wasn't the Heavenly Fate City from his memory, but rather an abandoned city. "Yes, this isn't Heavenly Fate City," a gloomy voice suddenly called out from the side, causing Chen Yu and Yang Inflammation to be startled at the same time. Turning their heads to look, they saw a familiar face with a smug and ruthless grin on his face as he stared at Yang Kai, as if there was some kind of deep hatred between the two of them. Seeing this person's face, Kai Yang understood everything. Looking at him, he grinned and said, "Brother Wang, it really is a small world." Wang Yuhan sneered, "I've been waiting for you here. This is the place I chose for you to be buried. Brother Yang, see if you're satisfied." Good, as a burial place, this is indeed a good place, but I don't know if it's yours or mine." Yang Kai narrowed his eyes and coldly snorted, "Steward Wang is also here, right? Since you're here, what's the point of hiding? Just show yourself." Saying so, he turned his head and looked towards the nearby ruins. An old man with a gloomy face slowly emerged from the ruins. Not only that, but behind him were several Saint King realm cultivators, all of whom were glaring at Yang Kai with unfriendly gazes. One or two of them even turned their eyes towards Chen Yu, a hint of obscenity flashing across their eyes. Seeing this situation, Chen Yu's face paled. How could she not know that she had just stepped into the gates of hell? Although she didn't know the specifics of what had happened, she could faintly guess that there had been a problem with the previous transmission. "Young man's tone isn't small, you really don't know how high the heavens are." The old man surnamed Wang coldly snorted. Wang Yuhan laughed wildly as his expression became fierce. "Yang Kai, when you ruined my plans time and time again, you never thought you would have such a day, but now it's too late to regret." "Regret? You think too highly of yourself." Yang Kai just stared at him indifferently, not showing the slightest trace of surprise or panic, which greatly surprised Wang Yuhan. He had thought that the other party would definitely be panicked, and it would be best if he could force him to kneel down and beg for mercy. Then, Wang Yuhan would humiliate and torture him to avenge himself, but how could he have known that this kind of intimidation would have no effect at all, causing him to feel a strong sense of powerlessness? Although Yang Kai knew that Wang Yuhan would definitely not give up, he had never imagined that there would be an abandoned city here where the space array could still be used. In his imagination, the three of them would pass through Black Crow City and teleport directly to Heavenly Fate City. Even if Wang Yuhan wanted to retaliate, he wouldn't have any chance, and Yang Kai wasn't afraid of the other party at all. He hadn't expected that his group would be teleported to this place, nor did he expect that the old man surnamed Wang would have such great ability to get Black Crow City to cooperate with him. That Jiang Wenjie from before must have known something about the situation, which was why he had reminded Yang Kai at the last moment, which could be considered as returning Chen Fan Lei's favor. As for whether Yang Kai lived or died, he probably didn't care. After all, there was no friendship between them. "A long night is fraught with dreams, let's begin." Seeing Yang Kai so calm, the old man surnamed Wang inexplicably had a bad premonition, decisively waving his hand and shouting, "This little brat is a bit unusual, I'll deal with him myself. I'll leave those two women to you. Sister Yu is still a virgin and has cultivated Joyous Union Pavilion's dual cultivation technique, so she should be of great benefit to you. As for the other girl, I want her." Wang Yuhan smiled coldly. "Understood, old man Wang, leave that girl to young Master Wang." The several Saint King realm masters behind old man Wang also nodded quickly, all of them staring towards Chen Yu with lewd smiles, causing her blood to run cold. "Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." Yang Kai's expression became fierce as he pushed his Saint Chi and a layer of black flames suddenly appeared around his body, making him look like a burning black fireball that exuded an extremely strange and terrifying aura. Immediately after, a long black sword appeared in Yang Kai's hand, and with a wave of his hand, he sent out a series of sword waves. A grain of rice dares to release its brilliance. Old Man Wang saw that Yang Kai actually dared to take the initiative to attack and immediately became furious, coldly shouting as he sent out an invisible force with him as the source. Under the influence of this force, the sword waves that shot out were actually impeded, as if they had fallen into a swamp, their speed greatly reduced, and as they broke through space, the sound of friction and cutting could even be heard. Although Old Man Wang was only a first-order origin returning realm cultivator, he had immersed himself in this cultivation for many years and had a deep understanding of Shi, so he was able to suppress Yang Kai's arrogance with a single move. Seeing this, Wang Yuhan and the other Saint King Realm Masters were overjoyed and were just about to take action when the several sword waves suddenly twisted and turned into black streaks of light, as if they were snakes that had been given life. Shaking their heads and tails, these black streaks of light instantly regained their original speed and arrived in front of the Saint King Realm Masters in the blink of an eye, opening their jaws and biting towards them. Yuan control technique. Old Man Wang's eyes twitched as he was greatly surprised, instantly condensing his Shi. At the same time, Wang Yuhan and the other Saint Kings also quickly moved to block these black streaks of light. Asterisk hong hong hong. Asterisk a series of explosions rang out as the fanged snakes that had been blocked instantly exploded, transforming into pitch-black demonic flames that shot out in all directions. Although they weren't able to injure anyone, it still caused them to be flustered for a moment, causing them to be in an incomparably sorry state and revealing fearful and terrified expressions. Old Man Wang's face went pale. He was confident in his identity, and because of Wang Yuhan's request, he did not intend to take the initiative to kill Yang Kai, only intending to slightly restrain Yang Kai and allow Wang Yuhan to personally avenge him. But how could he have known that a moment of carelessness would almost cause his grandson to suffer such a great loss? Yuan control technique was an extremely profound technique that was not something a Saint King realm cultivator could master. Only after reaching the origin returning realm and comprehending Shi would one be able to grasp the secrets of Yuan control technique. But today, he had witnessed it from a mere second-order Saint King realm cultivator, so how could he not be shocked? On top of that, the other party's black flames also seemed to be quite strange. When Old Man Wang used his divine sense to investigate them, he actually felt an aura that frightened him greatly. It was as if once he was contaminated by these flames, the consequences would be dire. Old Man Wang no longer dared to underestimate Yang Kai and quickly condensed and strengthened his Shi before sending it towards Yang Kai. Yang Yun and Qian Yu, who were standing beside Yang Kai, both let out muffled groans as they felt as if their hands and feet had been shackled by invisible shackles, unable to move or even circulate their Saint Qi. Chapter 1322. With an origin returning realm master attacking with all his strength, Yang Kai was naturally affected. The moment his figure slowed down, an overwhelming number of attacks began to rain down on him. It was Wang Yuhan and the others who had taken advantage of this opportunity to launch attacks. These attacks included martial skills and artifacts, each one filled with anger, clearly intending to kill Yang Kai on the spot. As long as Yang Kai died, these two women would not be a threat to them at all. In the face of such an attack, Yang Kai simply flipped his hand and a shield with a purple aura appeared in his hand. Immediately after, a strong wind and earth attribute aura burst out from the shield. Suddenly, a gust of wind and sand rolled up from the ground. In the blink of an eye, a small sandstorm formed around Yang Kai's trio, completely covering their figures. A loud bang rang out as the attacks and artifacts bombarded the sandstorm but were unable to penetrate it in the slightest as they were all swallowed up by it. Seeing this situation, Wang Yuhan's expression became cold. Back in Grand Burial Valley, he had seen Yang Kai use this origin-grade high-rank artifact, so he naturally knew how extraordinary it was. Now that he was personally attacking it, he understood just how powerful this shield's defense was. With such a defensive artifact, as long as the cultivator wielding it did not run out of Saint Qi, it was not something a few Saint King realm masters could break. It could be said that once the sandstorm surrounded Yang Kai and the others, they were in an invincible position. Good. The old man surnamed Wang's eyes lit up as he excitedly declared, "This old master wants this artifact." Saying so, He opened his hand and condensed a giant palm formed from his Saint Chi and directly grabbed towards Yang Kai and the others. These 5 fingers were like 5 mountains falling down, and even before they had reached the sandstorm, Yang Kai felt as if the world itself was under his control. At the same time, an almost imperceptible golden light suddenly flew out from the sandstorm and transformed into golden threads that cut through the air. The huge Saint Chi palm formed by the old man surnamed Wang only lasted a breath of time before it was cut into pieces by these golden threads and collapsed, no longer posing a threat. The golden threads that filled the sky also disappeared at this moment. Before Wang Yuhan and the others could react, the golden threads had already flickered and arrived in front of them. Once again, they covered the sky and converged into a giant net that enveloped the Saint King Realm cultivator. "Be careful of these golden threads," the old man surnamed Wang hurriedly warned as he tried to suppress the golden threads with his shi. But what terrified him the most was that not only was the golden threads not obstructed in the slightest. Instead, his aura had been cut into pieces. There was no way it could take shape. Impossible. The old man surnamed Wang's face's face to the heavens and shouted in shock, "Demon blood secret technique. This is the demon blood secret technique. You are a cultivator from?" Face. He finally recalled the origin of this golden thread through some of his own experiences. However, what Yang Kai couldn't understand was why the demon blood thread secret technique was golden in color. After all, he had heard that Demon Blood Temple's demon blood threads were red. As for the demon blood thread secret technique, it was one of the few secret techniques on Shadowed Star that could break shi. "Whether I am a cultivator from Demon Blood Temple or not is none of your business." Yang Kai's figure was hidden in the sandstorm, his expression indifferent as he waved the golden threads in his hand, catching Wang Yuhan and the other Saint King Realm cultivator off guard. At the same time, Yang Kai issued a vague order with his divine sense. Wang Yuhan and the others were all third order Saint Kings, so their strength was not weak. Seeing the old man surnamed Wang act like he was facing a great enemy, how could they not use their strongest defensive methods to defend themselves against this golden silk? 1 or 2 of them even began using their secret techniques in preparation to evade. However, what shocked them the most though was that before they could do anything, they suddenly felt a sharp pain in their knowledge seas, causing their minds to become unstable. Unable to circulate their Saint Chi and artifacts, they could only watch helplessly as the golden thread descended upon them. With a loud kai sound, the golden threads disappeared in a flash and were once again taken back by Yang Kai. Wang Yuhan and the other Saint King Realm cultivator stood motionless in place, their eyes filled with horror, as if they had seen something unbelievable. "Yuhan," the old man surnamed Wang shouted in a trembling voice. "Seventh Master." Wang Yuhan opened his mouth to respond, a pleading look on his face, but before he could finish his words, his body suddenly split apart and turned into a pile of minced meat. Kuala. The other Saint King Realm cultivators also suffered the same fate as Wang Yuhan, all of them shattering like a mirror, their wounds neat and smooth, as if they had been cut open by some kind of sharp weapon. With just a single blow, all of these Saint King Realm cultivator had fallen. The scene was extremely horrifying and the smell of blood filled the air. The old man surnamed Wang stared at the place where Wang Yuhan had fallen and the neatly arranged pieces of his body, his eyes going bloodshot as he flew into a rage. He was unable to accept such a scene. The other party was just a second-order Saint King Realm cultivator. How could he have killed so many opponents who were no weaker than him in an instant? This scene made him feel like he was in a dream, and he couldn't believe what he was seeing. After staring blankly for a while, he turned his head towards Yang Kai's position and grit his teeth as he shouted, "Little brat, you dared to kill my grandson. What kind of conspiracy did you use?" "Scheme." Yang Kai sneered and waved his hand, dispersing the sandstorm that had been enveloping him, revealing his figure once again. Staring at the old man surnamed Wang mockingly, he said lightly, "When you die, you'll understand. Ignorant brat, you think you can kill this old master?" The old man surnamed Wang laughed in anger, his Saint Chi fluctuating violently as the murderous intent in his eyes thickened. Obviously, he was enraged by Wang Yuhan's death. As soon as his voice fell, a yellow bell suddenly appeared in his hand. This yellow bell was only the size of a palm and looked quite ordinary, But Yang Kai's eyes narrowed, not daring to underestimate it in the slightest. The other party had the strength of an origin-returning realm master, yet he had actually used an artifact to deal with a mere second-order Saint King. Although this old man was somewhat angry, it was obvious he was using his full strength. Just as he was preparing to guard against the strange power of the yellow bell, the other party's wrist suddenly shook, and the sound of a bell suddenly rang out. When the sound of the bell entered his ears, Yang Kai actually felt his heart beat violently. Immediately, the blood in his body began to flow faster, and an uncontrollable violence began to spread out from his body. This old master has never used this soul-burying bell on a Saint King realm cultivator before. It is your honor to die under this bell. The old man surnamed Wang grit his teeth and shouted as he gently shook the yellow bell in his hand again. As soon as this sound entered his ears, Yang Kai's heartbeat began to beat again. This beating was extremely strange and exaggerated, and after 2 beats, Yang Kai actually felt a severe pain in his chest, as if his heart was about to burst. Yang Kai's complexion changed greatly as he suddenly realized that any origin-returning realm master could not be underestimated, especially an old cultivator like this old man surnamed Wang. Although his cultivation was unable to advance at all, his means of killing enemies were becoming more and more profound as he grew older. Pushing his Saint Chi to forcibly suppress the pain and violence in his heart, Yang Kai summoned the 100 Mountains picture and sent out a series of mountain phantoms towards the old man surnamed Wang's head. Thunderous booms rang out incessantly, but the old man surnamed Wang simply ignored the mountain phantom. He opened his mouth and spat out a small, pitch-black flag. The small flag expanded in the wind, instantly expanding to a radius of more than 100 feet, covering the old man surnamed Wang's head. When the mountain phantom came crashing down, strange phantoms with indistinct faces suddenly rushed out from the small flag. These phantoms slammed into the mountain, preventing it from falling even a bit further. "Little brat, use whatever means you have, this old master will let you die with understanding," the old man surnamed Wang shouted wildly, as if Yang Kai was his prey. Yang Kai sneered, "Old dog, are you sure you're not mistaken? I'm not fighting you one-on-one. You're counting on these 2 little girl." The old man surnamed Wang looked towards Chen Yu and Yang Inflammation sarcastically, but before he could finish his words, his face suddenly changed as he saw Yang Inflammation take out an exquisite pagoda-like artifact and gently toss it into the air, causing it to float mid-air. This pagoda had 7 floors, each of which exuded a different color. After the 7-story pagoda floated into the air, it began to rotate in different directions and at different speeds. As it rotated, a beautiful melody suddenly resounded throughout the world. This melody was extremely beautiful, as if many people were playing different instruments in unison. The rhythm was also very pleasant to the ears. Mixed with this melody was an invisible force that spread out, not only purifying Yang Kai's violence and dispelling the pain in his heart, it even covered up the sound of his opponent's soul-burying bell. A sound attack artifact. The old man surnamed Wang stared at this scene in disbelief, the corners of his eyes twitching. His shi had been broken by Yang Kai's golden blood threads, and the power of his soul-burying bell had also been suppressed by this 7-story pagoda. He suddenly realized that these people seemed to have come here specifically to restrain him, causing him to feel both angry and uneasy. Yang Kai had already taken a step forward, the demonic flame sword in his hand slashing out a shocking sword wave towards the old man, laughing as he said, "Old dog, just because Wang Yuhan was jealous, you want to kill me? You really are a competent elder. Since you've come, don't even think about leaving. Arrogant little brat." How could the old man surnamed Wang put this sword wave in his eyes? Pushing his Saint Chi, he pushed his hand forward and directly broke this sword wave. But in the next moment, he suddenly felt a burst of pain in his knowledge sea, as if something was wreaking havoc inside it, causing him to pale in fright. Before he had time to investigate his knowledge sea though, another jet black sword wave appeared in front of him. The old man surnamed Wang once again stretched out his hand in an attempt to break this attack. The sudden change in his knowledge sea made it impossible for him to investigate this attack, so when his hand came into contact with this jet black attack, he realized that it was not a sword wave at all. He cursed in his heart and wanted to retreat, but it was already too late. That pitch black attack was like the sharpest weapon, directly cutting through his palm. Like a hot knife through butter, it cut through all the way to his shoulder without any resistance. Half of his arm strangely disappeared, as if it had been swallowed by an invisible beast. Chapter 1323. In a moment of carelessness, half of his arm had disappeared, shocking the old man surnamed Wang and causing him to stumble back a few steps. After steadying himself, he glared at Yang Kai in shock and anger, a look of disbelief filling his face. He, an origin-returning realm master, had actually been injured to such an extent while fighting a second-order Saint King cultivator. If he were to speak of this, no one would believe him. Condensing his Saint Chi to his severed arm to prevent the blood from flowing out, the old man surnamed Wang took out a pill from his space ring and tossed it into his mouth, staring at Yang Kai with a look of dread. Since the other party had the means to injure him, he could definitely kill him. It wasn't until now that he had time to investigate the abnormalities in his knowledge sea. If it weren't for the changes in his knowledge sea just now, he wouldn't have been struck so easily. He would definitely have been able to see the strangeness of that attack, so he really wanted to know what had happened to his knowledge sea. After a quick investigation, the old man surnamed Wang paled and shouted in shock, "Soul-devouring insects. How is that possible?" Under his investigation, he was surprised to find that in his sea of consciousness, there were countless tiny insects that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. These insects were very subtle and silent, hibernating in his sea of consciousness, as if they were waiting for some order to attack. The changes in his knowledge sea just now were obviously caused by these soul-devouring insects devouring his soul. The reason why those Saint Kings were unable to withstand Yang Kai's attack was most likely also because of these insects. Otherwise, how could they have failed to avoid being cut by the golden silk? After understanding this, the old man surnamed Wang broke out in a cold sweat. He had naturally heard of the soul-devouring insects, but although ordinary soul-devouring insects were notorious, he didn't put them in his eyes. With his powerful strength as an origin-returning realm master, he was fully capable of expelling them. However, these soul-devouring insects were obviously not ordinary and had clearly evolved. The old man surnamed Wang tried to expel them with his divine sense, but they refused to budge and continued to hide in the depths of his knowledge sea, becoming a hidden danger to him. If he wanted to completely expel them, it would be impossible to do so without meditating for at least 1 or 2 hours. With this thought, the old man surnamed Wang immediately began to think of retreating, his expression flickering. His Sure and the soul-burying bell were restrained by the other party. Now that he was seriously injured and the soul-devouring insects in his sea of consciousness were waiting for an opportunity to attack, he was afraid that if he didn't leave now, he would be in grave danger. He was very afraid of the attack that could swallow half of his arm. You can actually recognize the soul-devouring bug. You're quite knowledgeable, old thing, but consider yourself unlucky. Your power is useless against me. This young master is your nemesis. Yang Kai laughed sarcastically as he waved his hands and sent out a series of space blades. Each of these space blades was pitch black in color and tore through space. If someone used their divine sense to investigate, they would find that the inside of these space blades was nothing but nothingness, as if there was nothing there at all. In an instant, more than a dozen pitch-black space blades shot towards the old man surnamed Wang. The corners of the old man surnamed Wang's eyes twitched and his expression became extremely ugly as he shouted, "Boy, don't be too arrogant." At the same time, his body suddenly expanded and a mass of black chi spread out, instantly covering a radius of more than a dozen meters. It was unknown what kind of secret art this old man was using to try and conceal his figure. However, when the dozen or so space blades cut through the black fog, they immediately opened up a dozen or so paths through it. Before the old man surnamed Wang could finish his words, he let out a strange cry and hurriedly dodged the space blades that approached him. Come, show me all the means you have. This young master will let you die with understanding." Yang Kai grinned coldly and continued to use idle chatter to disturb the old man's state of mind and arouse his anger. However, his hands did not stop, the space blades raining down on the old man like water. The old man surnamed Wang almost coughed up blood in anger. These words were clearly what he had just said to Yang Kai, but now the situation had taken a turn for the worse and the other party had actually returned them to him. As if he had been slapped in the face, The old man surnamed Wang's face burned with unwillingness and bitterness. Under the ravaging of the space blades, he didn't even have the mood to respond and could only silently dodge. If he hadn't realized what kind of attack this was when half of his arm had been swallowed up the first time, now he could faintly guess. After all, the space force fluctuations emitted by the space blades were extremely clear, so he wasn't a fool. The old man surnamed Wang was shocked. He had never known that there was someone on Shadowed Star who could cultivate the Tao of space to the point of condensing it into a blade and use it to attack enemies from a distance. Even Elder Mo Xiao Sheng of Heaven Battling Union couldn't accomplish this. It was rumored that Elder Mo was also proficient in the Tao of space. When the space arrays of many great forces were damaged or malfunctioning, they would invite him to repair them, but Elder Mo's use of the Tao of space was on a completely different level compared to this arrogant young man. Not only did the other party possess soul-devouring insects that could restrain him, but he was also proficient in this strange Tao of space. The old man surnamed Wang no longer dared to underestimate Yang Kai and instead began to treat him as an equal. The space blades seemed endless, ferocious and unstoppable. Wherever they passed, they swallowed up all that stood in their way, forcing the old man surnamed Wang to dodge in a sorry state. "Old dog, do you only know how to dodge?" Yang Kai shouted as he sent out a few more space blades. Suddenly, the phantom image of a budding lotus appeared in his eyes and he shouted, "Blossoming lotus." The old man surnamed Wang, who was taking advantage of the terrain to dodge the space blades, suddenly paused. Even without meeting Yang Kai's eyes, he felt the phantom image of a lotus appear in his mind. In an instant, it was as if the entire world had disappeared and was replaced by this seven-colored flower bud. In the next moment, the old man surnamed Wang felt the strength of his knowledge madly gather towards a certain place, completely out of his control. The source of this convergence was actually the lotus bud that had strangely appeared. As the strength of his knowledge poured into it, the lotus bud actually bloomed rapidly. Although he didn't know what mysteries this blossoming lotus possessed, the old man surnamed Wang knew that he absolutely couldn't allow it to fully bloom, otherwise, the consequences would be extremely dire. With a scream, the old man surnamed Wang bit the tip of his tongue and forcibly withdrew his attention from the blossoming lotus bud, at the same time causing his knowledge to tumble violently. Hong, with a loud bang, the old man surnamed Wang was shaken from the depths of his soul and his face suddenly went pale as he coughed up a mouthful of blood. His figure staggered and his complexion seemed to have aged several dozen years in an instant. He had used some unknown secret technique to burst open the lotus bud, but at the same time, his soul had also suffered some damage. Qian Yu was dumbfounded as she watched from the side, a look of both surprise and joy flashing across her beautiful eyes. When she realized that they had been ambushed, Qian Yu thought that this time there was really no escape, but how could she have imagined that the enemies who were so powerful and invincible to her would be easily defeated and killed by Yang Kai? Even the last Origin returning Realm Master, Manager Wang, was not Yang Kai's opponent. If Qian Yu didn't know Manager Wang personally, she might have thought he was just a Saint King Realm cultivator, but she knew that Manager Wang was a genuine Origin returning Realm Master. Usually, when she saw him, she would tremble with fear and speak carefully, but now, Manager Wang was panicking like a stray dog, no longer possessing the demeanor of a powerful senior. For a time, Qian Yu's heart was filled with mixed feelings as she stared at Yang Kai in a daze, thinking that Su Yang's vision was really good. When she first met Yang Kai, she had somewhat looked down on him, but how could she have known that Su Yang would have such great foresight? At this moment, Qian Yu finally relaxed and glanced over at Yang Inflammation, only to find that the other party's face was indifferent, without the slightest trace of nervousness. Only then did she understand that Yang Inflammation had full confidence in Yang Kai and that she had simply been overthinking things. An Origin returning Realm Master is only SOSO. Yang Kai sneered, "To be honest, I have no interest in Chen Shidao at all, nor do I have any intention of obstructing Wang Yuhan. It's just that your grandson is too narrow-minded, insisting on seeking his own death and even implicating you as his elder. If I were you, I would just smash my head against the wall and kill myself. Why bother struggling to survive?" Listening to his sarcasm and ridicule, the old man surnamed Wang felt both annoyed and regretful at the same time. If things were really as Yang Kai said, then what was the point of him coming here? Had he come here specifically to be humiliated and die? At this moment, the old man surnamed Wang wished he could grab Wang Yuhan out of the underworld and kill him a dozen times over. Although his face was extremely ferocious, he didn't have much energy left to vent his anger. He knew that even in his peak state, he couldn't do anything to this young man, so if he didn't leave now, he was afraid he really wouldn't be able to. A vicious glint flashed across his eyes as the old man surnamed Wang suddenly pointed his finger. A beam of profound light shot out and struck the flag that had been resisting the 100 Mountains picture. The flag immediately began to tumble as an extremely unstable energy fluctuation emanated from it. Soon after, with a loud bang, the flag exploded, releasing countless bizarre phantoms that flew uncontrollably in all directions. This artifact actually has the power to self-destruct. Yang Kai was shocked and quickly took back the 100 Mountains picture before summoning his purple shield again to protect Qian Yu and Yang Yang so they wouldn't be caught in the explosion. After doing this, Yang Kai looked up and found that the old man surnamed Wang was already 1,000 meters away. He had actually fled. Yang Kai coldly snorted as his wind and thunder wings unfurled behind him and his figure disappeared in a flash. So far, Yang Kai had yet to kill an origin-returning realm cultivator, so how could he miss such a rare opportunity? Moreover, judging from the methods used by the old man surnamed Wang, his understanding of Shi had clearly reached a certain level. As long as he killed him and absorbed his spiritual energy as well as his comprehension of the heavenly way and martial Tao, Yang Kai might be able to comprehend Shi and prepare to break through to the origin-returning realm. Although the old man surnamed Wang's cultivation was higher than Yang Kai's, he was still injured while Yang Kai had the assistance of his wind and thunder wings, so his speed was naturally much faster. Chapter 1324. The distance of 1,000 meters was quickly closed, and just as he was about to catch up to the old man surnamed Wang, Yang Kai suddenly noticed a shocking energy fluctuation from behind him. Immediately after, a stream of light shot past him and struck the old man surnamed Wang in the back. With a pitiful scream, the old man surnamed Wang fell to the ground and struggled for a moment before falling completely still. Yang Kai raised his brow and glanced back in surprise to see Yang Yang in his black robe holding a crossbow-like artifact in his hand and waving it towards him. Yang Kai recognized this artifact as one of his spoils from the battle in Liuyang Desert. He had obtained it from a cultivator from the Xie family who had once used this artifact to launch a sneak attack on Yang Kai. Unfortunately, the other party had failed and was ultimately killed by Yang Kai. However, although this artifact was quite powerful, the price to pay for using it was too great. It required a blood sacrifice and was an evil artifact, so Yang Kai hadn't paid much attention to it after obtaining it and had simply tossed it into his space ring. Unexpectedly, Yang Yang had refined and improved this artifact at some point and was now using it to deal with an enemy. Since the old man surnamed Wang was dead, it saved him a lot of trouble. Yang Kai immediately walked over to the old man's body and silently urged the power of his demon eye of annihilation. Soon, the old man's soul was sucked into Yang Kai's knowledge sea and purified. After removing the old man's space ring, Yang Kai immediately returned. Inside the abandoned hall, Qian Yu's beautiful eyes stared fixedly at Yang Kai, as if she didn't recognize him. After using the crossbow artifact, Yang Yang was also somewhat exhausted and his face was obviously pale. It seemed that even though this artifact had been refined and improved by her, the price to use it was still not small. Let's rest for a while, we'll continue on our way. There shouldn't be any more ambushes here, Yang Kai said and handed Yang Yang a bottle of pills. Then, he walked towards the space array. He wanted to completely destroy this space array. Regardless of whether the other party had arranged a backup plan, he couldn't leave behind any clues. Taking advantage of this time, Yang Yang hurriedly adjusted his breathing while Qian Yu went to collect the belongings of the other Saint King realm cultivator. A moment later, except for Yang Yun, who was still meditating, Yang Kai and Qian Yu were ready. Qian Yu handed over the space rings left behind by the others, a look of shock still on her face. Even now, she was still unable to accept what had just happened. Yang Kai glanced at her and naturally knew what she was thinking, waving his hand and saying, "Keep it for yourself, there shouldn't be anything good here, but it's still suitable for you to use. Don't worry about it, When you arrive at Dragon Cave Mountain, you'll understand just how rich they are. These things won't be of much use to you in the future. Qian Yu froze for a moment but didn't refuse, replying happily, I'm looking forward to it. She couldn't help looking forward to Dragon Cave Mountain. Since arriving in Star Territory and arriving at Joyous Union Pavilion, she hadn't met anyone she knew and had no place to rely on. She felt like a tree without roots, water without a source, suffering every day. But now, Kai Yang had finally appeared. This allowed her to find a pillar of support, and she couldn't help but be filled with hope for the future. Although Kai Yang was just a junior to her, this junior had now walked ahead of her in terms of cultivation realm, so it didn't matter if she relied on him a little. While waiting for Yang Yang to recover, Yang Kai sat to the side, thinking about the gains and losses of this battle. This was not the first time Yang Kai had fought with an origin returning realm master, but it was the first time he had killed one. If not for the interference of the soul-devouring insects and the mysteries of the Tao of Space, Yang Kai would not have been their opponent. However, it was also this battle that allowed him to understand that the golden blood thread he cultivated could actually break through Sha. This was a pleasant surprise. When Deng Ning of Demon Blood Temple taught him the Demon Blood Thread secret technique, he had not mentioned this point. Facing an old man surnamed Wang from a first-order origin returning realm, Yang Kai had to use his full strength, so what if he was facing a second-order or third-order origin returning realm master? Yang Kai suddenly realized that his cultivation was still too low. After returning from this trip, he should break through to the next realm. Only when his cultivation reached the origin returning realm would he be able to act without fear on Shadowed Star. Half a day later, after Yang Yang had mostly recovered, Yang Kai summoned his star shuttle and left the desolate city with the two women. After flying for 2 days, when they passed by a small city, Yang Kai went down to inquire about the direction and learned that this place was only half a month away from Heavenly Fate City, causing him to be overjoyed. He was really worried that this desolate city was further away from Heavenly Fate City than Black Crow City, but it seemed that their luck was quite good. The place Wang Yuhan had chosen to ambush them was not in the opposite direction of Heavenly Fate City. On top of that, this place was Shadow Moon Hall's territory, so with his friendship with Qian Tong, Wei Guchang, and Dong Xiena, Yang Kai was basically safe here. Along the way, Yang Kai did not say a word as he planned what he would do in the future while Yang Yang and Qian Yu chatted from time to time. Half a month passed by in a flash, and when the group of 3 returned to Dragon Cave Mountain, Qian Yu fell in love with this place at first glance. Although Dragon Cave Mountain was not as magnificent and domineering as the other great sects, it had its own unique style. The scenery here was picturesque, and it was like a paradise on earth. After handing Qian Yu over to Yang Yang, Yang Kai went to see the divine tree and learned that it had been doing well during this time. Under its nourishment, the transplanted golden sun fruit tree had become full of vitality and no longer withered. After letting the divine tree swallow a drop of golden blood, Yang Kai immediately announced that he would enter retreat. Inside the cave mansion, Yang Kai played with a crystal-clear cold bead in his hand, his eyes filled with tenderness. This bead was none other than Su Yang's ice soul bead. If the bead existed, she would exist. If the bead broke, she would die. Although Yang Kai did not know where Su Yang was, as long as this ice soul bead was still there, it meant she was safe. This bead had a trace of Su Yang's aura, which made Yang Kai feel nostalgic. After staring at it for a long time, Yang Kai grinned, held the ice soul bead in his palm, closed his eyes, and began circulating his secret art to break through his bottleneck. Back in Joyous Union Pavilion, Yang Kai's third-order Saint King bottleneck had already been touched, but at that time, he had been anxious to inquire about Su Yang's whereabouts, so he had forcefully suppressed it. Now that he had returned to Dragon Cave Mountain, the first thing he needed to do was naturally break through his current realm. The 10,000-year incense had been burning all this time, giving off a soothing fragrance. The place Yang Kai chose to meditate was under the 9-branch jade crystal tree, where he could comprehend the heavenly way and martial Tao, so this time's breakthrough was not a hindrance to him at all. In just 10 days, without using any pills or saint crystals, Yang Kai successfully broke through to the third-order Saint King realm. The sound of his breakthrough did not leak out as it was completely blocked by the barriers around the cave mansion, so no one on Dragon Cave Mountain even knew he had broken through. After spending another month or so consolidating his cultivation, Yang Kai began to count his gains from this trip. With a thought, Yang Kai took out another bead and played with it in his palm. This bead was different from Su Yang's ice soul bead in that it was gray and inconspicuous. It was the colored glass bead that Dai Yuan had given him. This was the essence condensed from Dai Yuan's 1000 illusion colored glass art after she cultivated the 1000 illusion colored glass art. It was equivalent to a monster beast's monster core and was extremely precious. Dai Yuan had said that if he could refine this colored glass bead, he might be able to comprehend the mysteries of the colored glass divine light. The colored glass divine light had the effect of binding one's body and capturing one's soul. Yang Kai had also suffered a small loss before and was deeply aware of this. If he could really achieve what Dai Yuan said, he would have one more method to deal with his enemies in the future. Moreover, the colored glass divine light had some similarities to his demon eye of annihilation. The demon eye of annihilation also had the ability to suppress one's soul, so if he could combine the two, Yang Kai could not say what kind of mutation would occur. After quietly contemplating for a while, Yang Kai came up with a plan in his heart and put the colored glass bead aside before taking out the Origin King-grade artifact refining furnace. When he was extracting the sun's true essence from the corpse cave, the artifact spirit had suffered some injuries, but after that, Yang Kai learned that this was actually a blessing rather than a curse for the artifact spirit Firebird because it had actually absorbed a trace of the sun's true fire and was currently hiding inside the artifact refining furnace to assimilate it. Now, more than a month had passed, but the artifact spirit Firebird showed no signs of waking up and was still refining and assimilating the trace of sun's true fire. However, Yang Kai found that the sun's true fire seemed to have decreased significantly while the artifact spirit Firebird's aura had become much stronger. Yang Kai immediately understood that the artifact spirit Firebird had really obtained huge benefits. Ignoring it, Yang Kai put away the artifact refining furnace. Next, Yang Kai inspected the stone mongoose. Like the artifact spirit Firebird, the stone mongoose had also been injured, but after the stone mongoose spat out the sun's true essence, Yang Kai had told it to absorb the essence of various minerals to repair itself. Now that he had seen the results, he could not help feeling quite surprised. The stone mongoose's injuries had actually healed, and after being released by Yang Kai, its eyes seemed to have gained a lot of intelligence. However, what Yang Kai was more concerned about was that the stone mongoose seemed to contain an extremely tyrannical fire attribute energy. Even when Yang Kai used his divine sense to investigate it, he was unable to see through it. As soon as his divine sense came into contact with this energy, it was incinerated. Sun's true fire. Yang Kai had not expected that the stone mongoose had actually absorbed the sun's true fire. What's more, the stone mongoose had completed its transformation much earlier than the artifact spirit Firebird, which made Yang Kai feel pleasantly surprised. As expected of an innate divine technique, even the artifact spirit born from the fire attribute cannot compare to it. The stone mongoose was born with the divine technique to purify minerals, and now that it had absorbed the sun's true fire, its purification would be even more thorough and perfect in the future. Unfortunately, he had not been able to find another blood essence stone. After all, there was another stone mongoose in his black book space. Without the blood essence stone, that stone mongoose could not truly be born. After confirming that not only was the stone mongoose fine, but it had also profited from its misfortune, Yang Kai gave it an order with his divine sense. The stone mongoose opened its mouth and spat out countless refined minerals, which soon formed a small mountain in front of Yang Kai. Chapter 1325. These things were all swallowed by the stone mongoose in the corpse cave. At that time, Yang Kai and Yang Yang were busy trying to collect the sun's true essence, so they didn't have much time to deal with the mountains of ores and saint crystals, so they asked the stone mongoose for help. There were 7 or 8 mountains of various ores and saint crystals in the corpse cave, and although the stone mongoose had only swallowed about half of them, it was still an astonishing amount. Some of these ores had been absorbed by the stone mongoose to strengthen itself and make up for the damage caused by the sun's true fire, but most of them were now piled up in front of Yang Kai. At that time, Yang Kai had been in too much of a hurry to check the quality and type of these ores, but since they had been piled up outside, Their quality and rarity were definitely not as good as those stored in his space ring. Now, after scanning them with his divine sense, Yang Kai was able to confirm his guess. However, he didn't need to worry about this, as all of these ores would be handed over to Yang Yang to deal with. Just as he was about to put these ores back into his space ring, Yang Kai suddenly let out a soft cry of surprise as he stared at a certain spot on the mountain in front of him. Waving his hand, a fist-sized, round, white, and flawless object appeared in his hand. Staring at this ball in surprise, Yang Kai soon seemed to remember something, and a look of surprise flashed across his face. Circulating his secret art once more, he noticed a huge amount of pure energy seeping out of the ball in his hand, causing his expression to become strange. Staring at the stone mongoose in a daze, he asked in amazement, "You can even purify this kind of thing?" The stone mongoose tilted its head and looked at him without saying a word. Yang Kai smiled slightly, knowing that it probably couldn't express its emotions. After all, the stone mongoose's sentience was limited. Reaching out, Yang Kai took out the cave mansion's barrier token that Yang Yang had given him before and poured his Saint Chi into it to transmit a message. A moment later, the cave mansion's barrier was opened from the outside and Yang Yang walked in quickly, asking curiously, "Weren't you in retreat? Why did you call me? Look at this." Yang Kai stretched out his hand and tossed the ball over to her. Yang Yang caught it, glanced at him suspiciously, and then began to carefully examine it. After a while, Yang Yang's beautiful eyes widened as a look of pleasant surprise appeared on her face, as if she had discovered something incredible. Quickly rushing over to Yang Kai, she asked anxiously, "Where did you get this thing? Is there anything else?" Kai Yang pointed at the small mountain in front of him. Yang Yang turned her head and looked over, but when she discovered that there were many round balls like the one she was holding in her hand, she couldn't help becoming slightly absent-minded. Yang Yang Yang's Yang Yang Yang. Yang Yang's, Yang, Yang, Yang Yang to Yang Yang to Yang Yang to Yang Tus to Yang Monarch's Yang Yang stone. "Leave some for me." Yang Kai looked at her with a depressed expression. "What do you want to do with this?" Yang Yang snorted as she covered her space ring with her small hand. "Cultivate. You can tell what this thing was transformed from, right? I just broke through not long ago, so I can use this to better stabilize my realm." Yang Kai scratched his face. "Of course I can tell. This thing should have been transformed by Xiao Xiao, right?" Yang Yang picked up the stone mongoose and kissed it a few times on the cheek, leaving Yang Kai dumbfounded and the stone mongoose at a loss. "I never expected Xiao Xiao to be able to purify and compress even saint crystals. This is great. The problem I was worried about was solved just like that, hee hee." Yang Yang's beautiful eyes stared at the stone mongoose as if she couldn't wait to kiss it a few more times. How could the stone mongoose be able to purify and compress saint crystals? "Didn't you know about this before?" Yang Kai asked in amazement. Yang Yang shook her head. "I tried before, but Xiao Xiao didn't have this ability. However, the stone mongoose was born with the ability to absorb the essence of various minerals and transform them into its own ability. Now that it can do this, I'm guessing it has something to do with the sun's true essence. Although I'm not certain, it shouldn't be wrong." Hearing this, Yang Kai gently nodded. The sun's true essence was said to be the hottest essence extracted from the stars and refined by the stone mongoose, so it wasn't surprising that the stone mongoose's ability had undergone some changes. However, the fact that even saint crystals could be purified and compressed and formed into a spherical object was shocking enough. Within the star territory, the best quality saint crystals known to exist so far were high-rank saint crystals, but this spherical object had broken this common sense and set a new precedent. The energy contained in this sphere was far purer and more abundant than high-rank saint crystals. Yang Kai had sensed it just now and felt that the energy contained in this sphere was equivalent to the sum of 5 or 6 high-rank saint crystals. This didn't mean that the value of this sphere was only equal to that many high-rank saint crystals. It was actually far more valuable than that. Because in theory, the exchange ratio between high-rank saint crystals, mid-rank saint crystals, and low-rank saint crystals was 1 to 10, but any cultivator knew that the higher the grade of saint crystal, the more valuable it was. The better the quality of saint crystals, the more help a cultivator could provide when breaking through bottlenecks, restoring saint chi, or meditating. At a critical moment, it could even be a matter of life or death. Although the energy contained in this sphere was only equivalent to the sum of 5 or 6 high-rank saint crystals, if it was circulated in large quantities, it could be exchanged for at least 10 or even 20 high-rank saint crystals. Of course, this was only in the early stages of mass circulation. If this sphere were to be sold alone, 10,000, 100,000, or even more was possible. After all, the rarer something was, the more valuable it was. Of course, Yang Kai didn't have any ideas about this. Judging from Yang Inflammation's performance just now, this saint crystal compressed by the stone mongoose was definitely of great use to her. On top of that, it was very likely to be related to something she had mentioned before, but Yang Kai didn't ask about it in detail. Since Yang Inflammation said she wanted to give him a surprise, all he had to do was wait and see. There was no need to beat around the bush. After determining that these spheres were refined by the stone mongoose after it had refined the sun's true fire, Yang Kai relaxed and asked Yang Inflammation about Qian Yu's situation. After learning that she had arrived here, she had gotten along very well with the cultivator here. Wu Yi had provided her with a lot of cultivation resources and a good cultivation environment, so she was now in retreat. After a cup of tea's worth of time, Yang Inflammation left happily, not only taking away the spheres and various minerals, but also the stone mongoose. According to her, if she hadn't seen Yang Kai open the cave mansion's barrier, she would have rushed in to ask Yang Kai for the stone mongoose's help. With the stone mongoose by her side, the efficiency of her artifact refining would greatly increase, which would be of great help to her grand plan. After Yang Inflammation left, Yang Kai opened the cave mansion's barrier again and touched the ring on his finger that Yang Inflammation had specially refined for him, a smile appearing on his face. There were only 2 things inside this ring. One was the 10,000-year ice jade pedestal and the other was the sun's true essence, but these 2 things were also the 2 most valuable things Yang Kai had obtained on this trip. If either of them were leaked out, it would cause a sensation on Shadowed Star. After thinking for a while, Yang Kai took out another ancient book, a dignified look on his face as he fell silent. This ancient book was also obtained from the corpse cave and belonged to the ancient Yang sect. At that time, there were too many ancient books, so Yang Kai hadn't carefully examined them. Later, when Yang Inflammation was refining the ring that stored the sun's true essence, Yang Kai had casually browsed through a few of the books and discovered this ancient book, which had aroused his interest. Because this ancient book didn't record any secret art, but rather one specifically used to temper one's physique. Yang Kai's physique was much stronger than that of a cultivator of the same level, but this was only possible because of the various opportunities he had encountered over the years, not because he had deliberately cultivated it. Because secret arts specifically for tempering one's physique and cultivating one's soul were extremely rare and precious, even if some were occasionally circulated, they were mostly trash that couldn't even enter the eyes of powerful masters. Naturally, Yang Kai didn't care about them. However, Yang Kai had never expected to obtain the 5 elements indestructible sword tempering art in the ancient Yang sect's corpse cave. When Yang Kai first saw it, he thought it was a secret book that introduced the sword Dao, but after carefully examining it, he realized it was actually a secret art for tempering one's physique. Yang Kai had roughly studied this secret art before and knew how profound and rare it was. If what this 5 elements indestructible sword tempering art said was true, then if one cultivated this secret art to the extreme, they would be able to achieve an immortal and indestructible physique. Moreover, after cultivating this secret art to a certain degree, they would be able to condense their blood qi into the profound heavenly 5 elements sword qi, which would be extremely powerful when facing an enemy. This greatly excited Yang Kai, but the requirements for cultivating this secret art were also extremely harsh. The strength of one's physique had to be at least twice that of a cultivator of the same rank in order to be able to withstand the pain and devastation of cultivating this secret art. Yang Kai felt that this shouldn't be a problem for him. Secondly, one's vitality had to be extremely vigorous, because cultivating this secret art would cause great harm to one's physique. If one's vitality was even slightly lacking, it was possible to fail in cultivating this secret art and die. The gains simply weren't worth the losses. Yang Kai felt that this requirement wasn't a problem for him. In terms of the strength of his vitality, Yang Kai didn't dare claim to be the strongest master in Star Territory, but with the strange nature of his golden blood, there were few who could surpass him. Thirdly, in order to cultivate the 5 elements indestructible sword tempering art, one needed to find supreme treasures of the 5 elements and absorb and refine the energy contained within them. After countless years of accumulation, one would finally be able to form the 5 elements indestructible sword tempering art. As for what a supreme treasure was, the ancient record of the 5 elements indestructible sword tempering art gave a rough explanation. If one wanted to cultivate this secret art, one needed to find materials equivalent to a 10th-order monster beast's monster core at the very least. This alone was something no one on Shadowed Star could accomplish. A 10th-order monster beast was equivalent to an Origin King Realm Master, and Shadowed Star simply didn't have such a thing. Yang Kai had 2 treasures that absolutely met these conditions: the sun's true essence he obtained on this trip and the profound yin sunflower water he had previously obtained. The 10,000-year ice jade pedestal also met these conditions, but if he really wanted to cultivate it, Yang Kai wasn't prepared to use it. Yang Kai still had some use for it. Chapter 1326. Of the 5 elements, there was no need to worry about water and fire. In addition, Yang Kai also had the thunder wood, a wood attribute treasure. This thunder wood was obtained by Yang Kai before he came to Shadowed Star. It was formed from the flesh and blood essence of the 10th-order monster beast Thunder Luan after it died. In terms of value, it was no worse than the monster core of a 10th-order monster beast. As for the metal and earth supreme treasures, Yang Kai still had no clue what to do with them. However, Yang Kai was not in a hurry. After all, even if he had collected all 5 supreme treasures of the 5 elements, he did not have much time or energy to cultivate them. There were too many things he had to deal with right now. He had to cultivate his space blade and golden blood thread secret technique, refine the dragon bone and dragon bead, and find a way to refine the colored glass bead. This was especially true for the golden blood thread secret technique. After learning that it could actually break Sha, Yang Kai's evaluation of it rose to a whole new level. Demon Blood Temple's secret technique was indeed worthy of being their foundation and had many unique aspects. Right now, Yang Kai had only cultivated a single golden blood thread and had yet to reach the grand accomplishment stage. If he wanted to cultivate more golden blood threads, he did not know how much time it would take. For these reasons, even though Yang Kai was extremely envious of the 5 elements indestructible sword tempering art, he would not immediately begin cultivating it. At the very least, he would wait until he had collected all 5 of the 5 elements indestructible sword tempering art. However, there was no problem in comprehending it first. Once he became familiar with it, he would be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort in the future. After secretly making up his mind, Yang Kai temporarily put the 5 elements indestructible sword tempering art into his space ring, sorted out his thoughts, and began to absorb the spiritual energy left behind by the old man surnamed Wang to spy on his heavenly way Martial Dao. This was the first spiritual energy left behind by an origin returning realm master that Yang Kai had absorbed, so naturally, he had to be very careful, swallowing it bit by bit, not wanting to miss even the slightest bit. 3 days later, the spiritual energy left behind by the old man surnamed Wang was exhausted and Yang Kai opened his eyes, revealing a thoughtful look. Although the old man surnamed Wang's cultivation was not very high, he had been immersed in the first-order origin returning realm for many years and had his own unique understanding of Sha. Now, more than half of these insights had become Yang Kai's wealth. Through this devouring, Yang Kai had a slight understanding of what real Sha was. Understanding was one thing, but if he wanted to cultivate, it was still a bit difficult. He could only wait until his own cultivation base had also broken through to that level before he could really start cultivating. However, if he encountered another origin returning realm master, Yang Kai would be able to use his understanding of Sha to make some countermeasures, so he wouldn't end up with nothing. Yang Kai believed that as long as he killed more origin returning realm masters in the future, his understanding of Sha would become more and more thorough. Accumulating sand to build a tower, it would not be impossible for him to eventually reach an unparalleled level. Only when an origin returning realm master cultivated their Sha to the grand accomplishment stage would they have a chance to break through to the origin king realm, and on Shadowed Star, there was no one who could reach this level, which was why no origin king realm master had ever appeared on Shadowed Star. Shadowed Star's world principles suppressed an origin returning realm master's comprehension of Sha. Yang Kai had not yet reached this point, but it was impossible for him to be trapped on Shadowed Star forever. If one day he really managed to reach the Third Order Origin Returning Realm, he would leave this place no matter what, escape the Shroud of World Principles, and reach the Origin King Realm in the outside world. It was too early to think about such things though, so Yang Kai quickly collected his thoughts and took out the colored glass bead that Dai Yuan had given him. Placing it in his palm, he silently poured his Saint Qi into it and began refining it. As soon as he began refining this colored glass bead, Yang Kai's expression shook and he immediately showed a look of pleasant surprise, immediately increasing the output of his Saint Qi. Almost imperceptibly, the colored glass bead's colored glass light drilled into Yang Kai's body bit by bit and, under Yang Kai's deliberate direction, converged into his left eye. The colored glass bead was equivalent to the monster beast's monster core, and Yang Kai had only thought that refining and absorbing the energy from the monster beast's monster core would be the most direct way possible, so he had given it a try, but he had not expected it to actually work and be so effortless. This made him overjoyed. Holding his breath, Yang Kai concentrated on absorbing this colored glass bead while continuing to cultivate the golden blood thread in his body. Time flew by and 2 months passed. On this day, Yang Kai slowly opened his eyes and looked at his empty hands, frowning slightly. After 2 months of absorption, the colored glass bead given to him by Dai Yuan was completely consumed by him and no longer existed. However, although he had absorbed the colored glass bead's colored glass light into his body, it would still take some time for him to completely refine it. Now, inside his knowledge sea, the demon eye of annihilation suspended mid-air was shrouded in a dazzling light. This light was the colored glass divine light contained in the colored glass bead. However, Yang Kai felt that the speed at which it was merging with the demon eye of annihilation was very slow, somewhat different from what he had expected, which made him a little depressed. After all, according to his previous calculations, the demon eye of annihilation and the colored glass divine light were similar and theoretically could be easily merged, but now it seemed that he had been too naive. However, this situation was also within his expectations. In any case, as long as there was enough time, the colored glass divine light would be able to merge with the demon eye of annihilation. It was just a matter of time. Putting this matter aside for the time being, Yang Kai shook his hand and 2 golden threads appeared. One of them shone with golden light and was incomparably sharp. As it trembled, it seemed to be able to cut through space. Its might was unparalleled. However, the other golden thread was clearly inferior. Not only was its color not bright, but the power contained within couldn't be compared to the first one. This golden thread was the second golden blood thread Yang Kai had cultivated. When Demon Blood Temple's disciples cultivated this secret technique, even if they spent their entire lives cultivating it, they might not be able to cultivate 2 golden blood threads because the foundation of this secret technique was one's own vitality. Each person's vitality was limited, and if one used too much, their lifespan would be shortened. In Demon Blood Temple, only the few elders who had reached the second or third order origin returning realm could cultivate 2 or 3 golden blood threads. Anyone below the origin returning realm could only cultivate 1. Even so, these elders were only able to cultivate golden blood threads after wantonly searching for pills that could nourish one's vitality. Otherwise, if they lost too much of their vitality, they would likely die. However, Yang Kai was different. He had several dozen drops of golden blood in his body, and each drop of golden blood could be transformed into a golden blood thread. What's more, golden blood could also be replenished, so in theory, he could cultivate countless golden blood threads. This was why he had chosen to cultivate this secret technique at the time, because this secret technique was simply tailor-made for him. More than a month ago, Yang Kai felt that he had cultivated his first golden thread to its peak. It wasn't that the golden thread had been tempered to its peak, but because he had only obtained the first half of the demon blood thread secret technique. As for how to further temper his golden thread and make it more powerful, Yang Kai had no clue. In desperation, Yang Kai chose to cultivate his second golden thread. With his previous experience, this second golden thread took shape much faster than the first, and Yang Kai believed that it wouldn't be long before it became as powerful as the first one. After cultivating his second golden thread, Yang Kai faintly understood something. He felt that this secret technique was not as simple as he had imagined. If there were enough golden threads, perhaps they could be combined to form other transformations. However, there was no introduction to these transformations in the first half of the demon blood thread secret technique, so young Kai guessed that they were hidden in the second half. After cultivating his golden thread to its peak, young Kai was unable to continue tempering it, and he had no clue about the transformations and combinations that young Kai had guessed. It seemed that if there was a chance in the future, young Kai would really have to pay a visit to Demon Blood Temple and obtain the second half of the Demon Blood Thread secret technique. Only then would he be able to progress further on this Tao. The harvest from this time's retreat was huge, and young Kai calculated the time and felt that it was time for him to exit. He remembered that Yang Yang had said last time that she would need to borrow young Kai's strength in her ongoing plan, but he didn't know if that time had come. Since he had been in retreat all this time, she definitely wouldn't dare disturb him. Making up his mind, young Kai went to take a look at the red candle fruit again. After confirming that the piece of red candle fruit had not withered under the nourishment of the red candle stalk, young Kai opened the cave mansion's barrier and walked out. The world energy aura in Dragon Cave Mountain seemed to be much denser than before, and there weren't many cultivators living here. Their cultivations were also quite uneven, so the consumption of world energy was naturally not great. This caused the world energy aura here to become denser and denser, unlike other great sects that had tens of thousands of disciples. Even if they had good earth veins to provide world energy, they could only maintain a balance. All around, young Kai looked around but did not see anyone. Not surprised by this scene, young Kai released his divine sense and soon found the location of Yang Yang and the others. However, what puzzled young Kai was that all the important figures on Dragon Cave Mountain had gathered together, as if they were discussing something important. Smiling faintly, Kai Yang slowly walked towards the bamboo house where these people were. But before he even reached the bamboo house, he heard Howen's voice from afar. "They've gone too far. Aren't they just sitting on the ground and raising the price? Why is this happening?" Immediately, Chang Chi's comforting voice rang out, Good, old Hao, sit down first. These youngsters are all calm, so why are you so agitated?" "Foreign Elder Chang, what do you think about this?" Wu Yi seemed to be asking. Heh, I think there's something strange about this. Chang Chi replied with a sneer, "Our cooperation with Shadow Moon Hall isn't a matter of just 1 or 2 days. Over the past 2 years, we've imported and purchased many materials from them, but at least 200 million saint crystals. We've always cooperated with them in good faith, not deceiving anyone, but this time, the price of materials has actually increased. It's really strange. Not only that, they even detained Yu Feng. It's really strange." Howen seemed to have calmed down and agreed. "Also, I've noticed something strange," Wu Yi said thoughtfully. "What is it?" "Since 3 months ago, the shopkeepers and workers of Shadow Moon Hall in Heavenly Fate City seem to have changed a lot. Now, all the people we're familiar with have disappeared. I can't even find Luo Qing." Inside the bamboo house, the group of people looked at each other and suddenly realized that something must have happened inside Shadow Moon Hall. Chapter 1327. Just as everyone was feeling surprised, the door of the bamboo house was pushed open and a figure stepped inside. Everyone was startled at first, but after seeing the face of this newcomer, they couldn't help standing up, Wu Yi happily calling out, "Yang Kai, you've come out of seclusion?" Yang Kai nodded before sweeping his eyes around, his gaze eventually landing on Chen Yu. Finding that her complexion was much better than when he saw her in Joyous Union Pavilion, Yang Kai immediately relaxed, knowing that she was living happily here. To the side, Chang Chi and Howen exchanged a glance, a look of shock flashing across their eyes before they cupped their fists and said, "Congratulations, Nephew Yang, for breaking through to the Third Order Saint King realm. Nephew Yang's cultivation speed is simply unmatched on Shadowed Star." The last time they went to Liu Yang Sandfield, Yang Kai was just a First Order Saint King, but after coming out of Liu Yang Sandfield, he had broken through to the Second Order, and now, he had actually broken through to the Third Order. Only 2 or 3 years had passed since then, shocking the two of them and making them feel ashamed of their own inferiority. Compared with Yang Kai's promotion speed, their aptitude was simply mediocre to the extreme. 2 foreign elders are too polite, This junior only obtained some opportunities to reach this height. Compared to those true geniuses, he is nothing. Yang Kai smiled modestly before changing the subject. Let's not talk about this matter for now. I just heard you talking about Shadow Moon Hall and Yu Feng being detained. What's the situation? Tell me about it. Seeing Yang Kai ask, everyone glanced at each other before Wu Yi took the initiative to explain. After listening to her explanation, Yang Kai learned that something bad had really happened in Heavenly Fate City. A month ago, Dragon Cave Mountain had ordered a batch of goods from Shadow Moon Hall. A few days ago, Yu Feng had taken a few Haiku family cultivator to Heavenly Fate City to pick up the goods, but he hadn't expected that the other party would not only fail to fulfill their previous agreement but also raise the price of those goods by more than 30%. Yu Feng naturally wouldn't accept such a price. At that time, he had tried to reason with the person in charge of Shadow Moon Hall in Sky Fortune City, but he hadn't expected that the other party wouldn't budge an inch. Yu Feng had no choice but to ask the other party to refund the deposit. After all, the other party had broken the contract first. Yu Feng felt that even if he didn't buy these goods, he couldn't suffer such a great loss. Who would have thought that the other party wouldn't retreat at all? Not only did they not retreat, they even started beating people up. The 5 disciples that Yu Feng brought with him were all injured. During the battle, Yu Feng and the others naturally wouldn't allow themselves to be captured without a fight. They put up a little resistance and broke several shelves in the shop before being captured by an Origin returning realm master. Not only were they detained, but the saint crystals they had prepared to trade were also confiscated. Only one disciple was allowed to return and inform Dragon Cave Mountain to prepare a large number of saint crystals as ransom. If not for this, Wu Yi and the others wouldn't have known such details. After listening to this, Yang Kai's expression remained indifferent, his expression as calm as an ancient well. After pondering for a while, he asked, "Their lives aren't in danger, right?" According to the disciple who came back, although the injuries they suffered weren't light, they weren't serious and only needed a few days to recover. Good, that's good. Yang Kai gently nodded before looking up at the crowd and asking, "What do you think is wrong?" "What's wrong?" Wu Yi was startled and shouted, "Everything is wrong. We've been cooperating with Shadow Moon Hall for so long without any twists and turns. We pay Saint Crystals to buy materials and they make a lot of money from us. Over the past 2 years, we've become Shadow Moon Hall's biggest customer. They can't wait to curry favor with us, so why would they do something so despicable? Moreover, the people below Shadow Moon Hall definitely don't have the guts to do such a thing. I suspect someone from above is behind all of this. This old man feels the same way." Chang Chi echoed from the side, "Our Dragon Cave Mountain's foundation is still shallow. Although we are sitting on a huge amount of resources, an ordinary man's wealth is his own ruin. Perhaps Shadow Moon Hall has become impatient with our business dealings and wants to swallow us whole. Do you suspect Chen Tong?" Yang Kai narrowed his eyes. "It's not impossible," Wu Yi nodded. "It's possible, but I don't think Chen Tong has anything to do with this." Yang Kai shook his head. Of all the people present, he had the most dealings with Chen Tong. Without even mentioning Chen Tong's personality, his friendship with Wei Guchang and Dong Xiena, as well as the fact that he had saved them in Liu Yang's desert, made it clear that Chen Tong wouldn't burn the bridge after crossing it. "I just heard you say that since 3 months ago, all the shops in Heavenly Fate City belonging to Shadow Moon Hall have been replaced. Is that true?" Yang Kai asked again. It's true," Wu Yi nodded quickly. "Because I often go in and out of Heavenly Fate City, I'm quite sure about this. In the past 6 months, has anything unusual happened in Shadow Moon Hall?" Yang Kai frowned. "If we're talking about unusual events, there have been none in Shadow Moon Hall, but there have been some. In the past few months, a lot of unfamiliar faces have entered Dragon Cave Mountain. At first, they just wandered around the periphery, but later, a few of them actually broke in and were trapped in the spirit array. After they were captured, they simply said it was an accident. Because their strength wasn't high, we didn't embarrass them and let them go after giving them a warning. As for the big event, there really was one." "What?" Yang Kai's expression became solemn. "Grandmaster Ji Lin passed away," Wu Yi quickly said. "Grandmaster Ji Lin?" Yang Kai frowned and thought for a moment before suddenly asking, the origin grade low-rank artifact refiner from Shadow Moon Hall? It happened about half a year ago. Rumor has it that after Grandmaster Ji Lin repaired an artifact in Shadow Moon Hall, he suffered a huge loss of vitality and didn't have much lifespan left. In the past few years, he hasn't even refined another artifact. Does this have anything to do with us? I don't know the specific situation, but perhaps it has something to do with it. A thoughtful look flashed across Yang Kai's face. I heard from Qian Tong that he and Grandmaster Ji Lin had a very good personal relationship. Wu Yi pondered for a moment before asking in surprise, what you mean is that Grandmaster Ji Lin's death affected Elder Qian Tong, and since we have always been sheltered by Qian Tong, we were also affected? Yang Kai grinned, I'm just guessing. Perhaps that old dog Qian Tong is burning the bridge after crossing the river, but if this matter is really related to the internal struggle of Shadow Moon Hall, it's best we stay out of it. We can't get involved in Shadow Moon Hall's affairs. Wu Yi immediately raised her guard. Wu Yi suddenly became vigilant. She hadn't thought about it so deeply before, but after being enlightened by Yang Kai's words, she seemed to understand the essence of the matter. Is there any news from Wei Guchang and Dong Xiena? Yang Kai asked again. Wu Yi shook her head. Shadow Moon Hall announced to the public that the two of them are in retreat trying to break through to the origin returning realm, but I don't know the specifics. Understandable. Forget it, it's better to rely on oneself than others. Since Yu Feng has been detained, I'll make a trip to get him back. Losing Saint Crystals is one thing, but I can't let anything happen to him. That's 20 million Saint Crystals we're talking about, Wu Yi said with a distressed expression, and, what are you going to do about it? If they don't care about face, there's no need to give them any face, otherwise, they'll really think my Dragon Cave Mountain is easy to bully, Yang Kai coldly snorted. Wu Yi was dumbfounded. Yang Kai smiled and waved his hand. If it's really because of the internal struggle of Shadow Moon Hall, we don't need to worry too much. Right now, they're too busy dealing with other matters, so there's definitely no master there. On top of that, I really want to know who wants to target our Dragon Cave Mountain. If I don't go there myself, how can I figure it out? This old master will accompany you. Chang Chi stood up. Howan also said, this old master will go as well. Although old Chang and I don't have high cultivations, we're still origin returning realm masters. Since breaking through, we haven't had a chance to fight anyone. This trip will be a good opportunity to test our strength. The two old men looked at each other and smiled. Yang Kai thought about it for a moment before nodding. Good, then I'll have to trouble two foreign elders. The rest of you don't need to follow me, just stay here. Then you must be careful, Wu Yi exhorted. After the discussion, Yang Kai immediately led Chang Chi and Howan out of the bamboo house, summoned his star shuttle, and flew straight to Heavenly Fate City. In Heavenly Fate City, in a shop called Gathering Source Hall, Yu Feng and the others were tied up in a room in the inner courtyard. Their faces were all bruised and swollen, and the Saint Chi in their bodies seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Clearly, a powerful seal had been placed on them. They were lined up in a row and kneeling on the ground. In front of them, there was a sinister-looking old man sitting on a sandalwood chair. The old man's hair was white, and he held a purple teapot in his hand. His eyes were half closed, as if he was asleep. However, the light and ruthlessness that occasionally burst out from his eyes showed that he was more alert than ever. Tell me, what's the safe route in and out of Dragon Cave Mountain? Tell me and I'll let you go so you don't have to suffer any more physical pain. Next to the old man was a ferocious-looking brawny man, who was holding a 3-finger-thick whip and playing with it as he asked coldly. Bah! Yu Feng spat out a mouthful of spit mixed with some blood, hitting the brawny man's cheek. You want to know the route in and out of Dragon Cave Mountain from Grandfather? Dream on. Grandfather won't tell a bunch of despicable people like you even if he dies. The brawny man remained motionless, allowing the spit to slide down his cheek as he grinned wickedly. The whip in his hand suddenly whistled through the air and landed on Yu Feng's face. With a crisp crack, the right side of Yu Feng's face split open and a piece of flesh flew out. In an instant, blood sprayed everywhere. Yu Feng's entire body was knocked askew and he almost fell to the ground, but he quickly straightened up and grinned. Continue. Even if you beat grandfather to death today, don't think you'll learn anything from me. When you rush into Dragon Cave Mountain, you'll have a taste of those thousands of spirit arrays. Ha 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 ha. A series of wild laughter caused the brawny man's face to darken and the old man sitting on the chair to become impatient. Chapter 1328. The old man's cultivation was only at the peak of the First Order Origin returning realm, so if it weren't for his scruples, he wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to kill Yufeng and use his soul-searching secret technique to obtain the information in Yufeng's mind. It was only because of a number of reasons that the old man didn't dare to kill people so easily. Moreover, using his soul-searching secret technique consumed a lot of energy, so there was no guarantee he would be able to obtain the information he wanted, so he could only resort to this method to threaten Yufeng and the others. Seeing Yufeng act so stubbornly, the brawny man sneered, Good, 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 I like people like you who have backbone. You can insist on keeping your mouth shut, but what about them? I'd like to see if all of you are as tough as you are. As he spoke, he looked at the second person and asked the same question. And the answer he got was actually a mouthful of saliva mixed with blood. The brawny man lashed out with his whip again, sending the Haiku family disciple flying a few times before crashing heavily to the ground, unable to get up for a long time. Immediately, he turned his gaze to the third person, his expression becoming extremely gloomy as he snapped, Speak, it'll be easy for you to speak, or else you'll suffer. The third Haiku family disciple raised his eyes and looked at him indifferently. This disciple was only a first-order saint, the one with the lowest cultivation among the group. Now that his saint chi had been sealed, if he were to take a hit from this whip, he wouldn't be able to get out of bed for 10 days to half a month. Yufeng opened his mouth, seemingly wanting to say something, but before he could, the man said, Rest assured, Brother Feng, although we haven't been on Dragon Cave Mountain for long, each of us has obtained a lot of benefits. How could we be ungrateful wolves who repay kindness with enmity? The Shadow Moon Hall is nothing. Could it have helped so many of us break through 1 or 2 minor realms in such a short period of time? Good. Yufeng's heart warmed as he nodded heavily, knowing that this man was right. 50 to 60 Haiku family disciples had left the family with Wu Yi and joined Dragon Cave Mountain. In the past 2 to 3 years, they didn't have to worry about cultivation resources at all, and they had an endless supply of various pills. Their lives were countless times better than before, and each of them had obtained at least 1 or 2 artifacts to defend themselves, all of which were Saint King grade. It could be said that every Haiku family disciple had already regarded Dragon Cave Mountain as their home and had developed a strong sense of belonging. Seeing this, the brawny man knew that it was pointless to ask, so he stopped talking and raised the whip in his hand. Just as the whip was about to strike, the old man sitting on the chair T suddenly opened his eyes and turned his head to look outside. Hong. A loud bang rang out, mixed with a violent Saint Chi fluctuation. There seemed to be a fight taking place outside, accompanied by a few cries and screams before everything calmed down. Who's intruding into gathering hall? The old man's face became cold as he stood up and rushed out, but just as he was about to fly out, he let out a strange cry and flew back as if he had suffered a heavy blow. A beam of light followed closely behind him and fell directly into the room, enveloping the old man in an imposing manner. The old man's face filled with shock as he quickly summoned a small shield-like defensive artifact to block in front of him. A loud explosion rang out and the old man was forced back a few steps before he was able to cushion the impact. Looking at his shield again, his face couldn't help twitching. Yang Kai's origin grade low-rank defensive shield was now stained with clusters of black flames. These flames were so hot that the surface of the shield was showing signs of melting. This scene caused the old man's soul to leave his body as he realized that if he had been hit by these flames just now, even if he didn't die, he would have been severely injured. Before he could react, 2 forces descended from the sky and enveloped the entire room. When he looked up again, he saw a tall and sturdy young man, wrapped in a cold aura, leisurely entering. Behind this young man were 2 old men, both of whom were first-order origin returning realm cultivators just like him. The shur that had enveloped the room was released by these 2 old men. The old man's eyes narrowed as he knew that the situation was not good. He was the only origin returning realm master here, so it was impossible for him to fight 2 people at once. Hurriedly taking out an item from his space ring, he crushed it, and breathed a sigh of relief. Yang Kai. Foreign Elder Chang, Foreign Elder Hao. Yu Feng and the others saw the newcomers and were overjoyed and shouted. Yang Kai swept his eyes around and saw the tragic injuries on these people's bodies, causing his eyes to shrink as infinite murderous intent surged in his heart. Yu Feng and the others' injuries were already very serious, and their vitality was clearly insufficient. There were obvious signs that their foundations had been damaged. If Yang Kai had come out of seclusion 2 days later, their cultivations would have regressed, but it was not too late now. As long as he provided them with some pills, they would recover in a few days. You're Yang Kai? The old man was taken aback when he heard this and stared at Yang Kai. Yang Kai glanced at him faintly, not showing any intention of responding, instead signaling to Chang-Chi with his eyes. Chang-Chi understood and immediately stepped forward, condensing his Saint Chi into a sharp blade at his fingertips. First, he unbound Yu Feng and the others, then probed the seals on their bodies, frowning deeply. Although these seals were also issued by the First Order Origin Returning Realm Cultivator, it would take Chang-Chi at least 2 hours to crack them. Obviously, now was not a good time. Leading Yu Feng and the others to Yang Kai's side, Chang-Chi whispered a few words to him before standing aside. Yang Kai nodded lightly before turning to the old man and narrowing his eyes. From what you said just now, it seems you already know me. So what if I do? The old man coldly snorted. Yang Kai showed a playful smile at the corner of his mouth and suddenly asked, Your surname is Xie? The old man's expression changed slightly as he became shocked and blurted out, How did you know? Sure enough. Yang Kai gently nodded, a look of understanding appearing on his face. When he was discussing this matter with Wu Yi and the others, he had already guessed this. If Dragon Cave Mountain was really implicated because of the internal strife within Shadow Moon Hall, then his side shouldn't have been implicated so deeply. After all, no matter who it was, Dragon Cave Mountain was a big customer, so cooperating with it would only bring benefits and no harm. There was no reason to offend it for no reason. Yang Kai instinctively felt that anyone who would act so unscrupulously against Dragon Cave Mountain must have some sort of grudge with him. As for those who had a grudge against him and were related to Shadow Moon Hall, it was none other than the Xie family. Xie Hongwen was a disciple of Shadow Moon Hall while his father, Xie Li, was also a steward of Shadow Moon Hall. Although his status was not as high as Chen Tong's, he still had some authority. The Xie family was another force independent of Shadow Moon Hall, but was also inextricably linked to Shadow Moon Hall. There were only 2 reasons why they would act against him. The first was because they suspected Xie Hongwen's death was related to him. After all, a disciple of Shadow Moon Hall had tipped off Xie Hongwen about Yang Kai's location in Liuyang Sandfield. In the end, Xie Hongwen was unable to escape from Liuyang Sandfield, so he must have fallen. This was enough for the Xie family to suspect Yang Kai. So far, no one from the Xie family had come to find trouble with him, probably because they were afraid of Qian Tong and his illusory origin grade artifact refiner. The second reason was that the Xie family was taking this opportunity to test Qian Tong's strength. If Qian Tong still had the strength to protect Dragon Cave Mountain, then Yang Kai would definitely not stand idly by. Now, it seemed that Qian Tong's situation was not very good. Yang Kai's thoughts turned sharply as he speculated about the situation. However, he was not sure what the truth was, but it should not be far from what he had speculated. As long as he made some inquiries in the future, he would be able to figure it out. Considering all this, Yang Kai's mood suddenly improved. As long as it was not Qian Tong who came to deal with him, it did not matter. Moreover, since the Xie family was taking the lead, it meant that the internal disputes of Shadow Moon Hall were really deep. Not only was Qian Tong unable to deal with this matter, but his opponents also did not have much energy to pay attention to this side. This way, Yang Kai no longer had any scruples. With the current heritage of Dragon Cave Mountain, Yang Kai didn't put a trivial Xie family in his eyes. If the other party dared to provoke him, Yang Kai would let the Xie family know what it meant to not touch a tiger's butt. This old master is Xie Quan. Seeing that he had spilled the beans, the old man no longer tried to hide it and sneered, since you know that this old master is from the Xie family, You dare to destroy my gathering source hall? Boy, you are really arrogant. Xie family. Heh heh. Yang Kai chuckled for a while before touching his chin and looking at Yu Feng. Who beat you up like this? Yu Feng was stunned for a moment before pointing at the brawny man behind Xie Quan. Yang Kai gently nodded, but his face suddenly became ferocious. With a flick of his wrist, a golden thread shot straight towards the brawny man. Xie Quan's face changed as he shouted, "You overestimate yourself." As he spoke, he released his sure, and at the same time, he flicked his fingers to attack the golden thread. In his mind, the attack of a third-order Saint King was something he could easily break with a wave of his hand, so releasing his sure was already quite impressive for Yang Kai. But in the next moment, his eyes trembled because the golden thread actually cut his sure into pieces. He couldn't form it at all, and the chi he sent out had no effect at all. Only then did he realize that he had underestimated his opponent. In a hurry, a top-like artifact appeared in his hand. As the artifact spun, beams of light shot out from it, forming a barrier in front of the brawny man in the blink of an eye. He was an origin-returning realm cultivator, so it would be too shameful if he allowed his opponent to kidnap someone right under his nose. A scene that shocked him appeared. The barrier couldn't stop the golden thread from breaking in. As soon as it came into contact with the golden thread, it exploded. In the next moment, the brawny man cried out in alarm as his body was swept up by a powerful force and flew straight towards Yang Kai. Put this old master down. Xie Quan's old face flushed red. Saint Chi burst out of his body as he raised his hand and pushed towards Yang Kai. A huge palm print shot out from his hand, as if he wanted to smash Yang Kai into a meat patty. Yang Kai snorted coldly and pushed out his palm as well. Another huge palm print appeared and collided with Xie Quan's palm print. Not only did it swallow up the other party's palm print, but it also produced a power that covered the heavens and the earth, enveloping Xie Quan instead. Xie Quan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He never thought that a third-order Saint King could actually fight him head-on, and even gain the upper hand. Chapter 1329. In the blink of an eye, the brawny man was dragged to Yang Kai's side. His eyes were wide open, filled with horror. He was a third-order Saint King, but in front of this young man who was of the same cultivation level as him, he was powerless to resist, which made his hair stand on end. It was only at this moment that he seemed to think of resisting, but just as he gathered his Saint Chi, Yang Kai gently patted him on the shoulder. The brawny man groaned as his face turned slightly pale, and he could no longer gather the strength in his body. Yang Kai kicked him in front of Yu Feng and the others, snatching the long whip in his hand and throwing it to Yu Feng, saying coldly, "An eye for an eye, an eye for an eye." Yu Feng caught the whip and was stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses. He exchanged glances with his tormented companions and surrounded the brawny man with a grin. In the next moment, the sound of punches, kicks, and whips rang out, mixed with the brawny man's screams and cries for help. Xie Quan's face was livid, and a terrifying light flashed in his eyes, as if he wanted to devour someone. He looked at Yang Kai and nodded. "Good, young people are indeed full of vigor. This old master wants to see how long you can be arrogant." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand and suddenly, several figures rushed out from all directions. There were at least a few dozen of them, and they surrounded the ruins of the gathering source hall, glaring at Yang Kai and the others. Although none of these people was an origin-returning realm cultivator, their numbers were enough to make Chang Chi and Howen pale. Not only that, from all directions of Heavenly Fate City, many people were also flying over, many of them origin-returning realm masters. After a short while, the situation took a turn for the worse. Yang Kai and the others, who had been able to gain the upper hand, were now at a complete disadvantage in terms of numbers and cultivator realm. Chang Chi glanced around and his face sank. He found that there were 7 or 8 origin-returning realm masters gathered around. Obviously, they were all helpers called by Xie Quan. He had expected this situation before he came. After all, this was a trip into the tiger's den. It was impossible for the other party not to call for help, but he did not expect the other party to make such a big scene. Secretly glancing at Kai Yang, Chang Chi was surprised to find that he was still calm and composed, as if he had a card up his sleeve. This caused Chang Chi to be slightly surprised, But at the same time, he was also affected, secretly wondering what kind of card Kai Yang had left behind. Brother Xie, is this the one who destroyed the gathering source hall? An old man with a goatee who had rushed over first greeted Xie Quan. His voice was cold as he stared at Kai Yang and asked. Xie Quan cupped his fists and said bitterly, I am ashamed, but it was indeed this boy who destroyed it. This old master did not expect that he would have two origin returning realm masters by his side. This old master was alone and was outnumbered. I failed to protect him. After this Xie will definitely apologize to your noble hall. The old man with the goatee chuckled and waved his hand. Brother Xie is too serious. It's just a trivial gathering source hall. If it's destroyed, then so be it. My Shadow Moon Hall is a big family, so we don't care about this little thing. On the other hand, Brother Xie, your junior's situation seems to be a little bad, right? As he spoke, he looked at the brawny man who was being beaten up by Yu Feng and the others and said with a cold expression, since this old master and the others are here, you still dare to attack? Aren't you being a little too arrogant? Stop it for this old master. As he spoke, a sharp light flashed in his eyes and a powerful divine sense pressure descended from the sky, enveloping Yu Feng and the others. At the same time, Chang Chi chuckled meaningfully and also released his own spiritual energy. The two divine senses collided in mid-air and disappeared silently. They were both from the First Order origin returning realm, so Chang Chi was naturally not afraid of him. They were evenly matched. Yu Feng and the others could not help but stop at this moment and look up at Yang Kai. They had never been surrounded by so many origin returning realm masters before, so they were somewhat uneasy. Keep fighting. Stop when you've vented your anger. Yang Kai glanced at the many origin returning realm masters, as if he did not put any of them in his eyes. His arrogant expression made all the masters here frown in displeasure. The old man with the goatee seemed to be about to say something, but Yang Kai interrupted him. Are you from Shadow Moon Hall? Yes. The old man stroked his beard. This old master is Shadow Moon Hall's junior manager, Ma Xin Yuan. Junior manager. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes and a sarcastic smile appeared on his lips. May I ask where Elder Qian Tong is now? Elder Qian. Ma Xin Yuan's face changed slightly, as if he was a little afraid. It was not just him. When Yang Kai mentioned Qian Tong, most of the origin returning realm masters gathered here had the same expression. Seeing this, Yang Kai immediately understood that this group of origin returning realm masters was definitely not on the same side as Qian Tong. They were probably his opponents in Shadow Moon Hall, otherwise, they would not show such expressions. It seemed that his previous guess about Qian Tong and the incident in Shadow Moon Hall was not far from the truth. Elder Qian is naturally in Shadow Moon Hall. Boy, you destroyed my Shadow Moon Hall's gathering source hall and injured people here. Don't think that you can get away with it just because you know Elder Qian. Even if the Heavenly Emperor comes today, you won't be able to escape, a middle-aged man on the right shouted. Yang Kai glanced at him and chuckled. Of course I won't leave before this matter is resolved. I came here today for two things. As he spoke, he pointed at Yu Feng and the others. Take them away and collect the materials owed by your noble hall. The 7 or 8 origin returning realm masters looked at each other and saw the mischievous look in each other's eyes. A few of them could not help but laugh, obviously mocking Yang Kai for overestimating himself. Xie Quan looked at Yang Kai sarcastically. Boy, you talk big. You think you can take them away just because you said so? Did you ask for this old master's permission? If you don't agree, I'll beat you until you do. Yang Kai shouted and pointed his finger. An artifact that looked like an artifact refining furnace appeared out of thin air. The moment this artifact refining furnace appeared, the temperature within 1,000 meters of it rose sharply, making everyone feel as if they had fallen into a sea of fire. Even the air was distorted by the heat. In the next moment, a sharp bird cry sounded out from the furnace. Immediately, a crimson firebird that was more than 30 feet long flew out from the furnace. The firebird spread its wings, and all of Sky Fortune City's fire attribute heaven and earth spiritual energy seemed to be attracted by it, converging into its body. No one expected that Yang Kai would be so bold as to take the initiative to attack when they were at an absolute disadvantage in terms of numbers and cultivation. When the Firebird appeared and absorbed the surrounding world energy, its body expanded to several dozen meters in length and covered half the sky. Only then did the many origin-returning realm masters come back to their senses. Xie Kuan's eyes trembled as he stared covetously at the Firebird and cried out involuntarily, "Artifact spirit! It's the artifact spirit!" As soon as his voice fell, the artifact spirit Firebird opened its mouth and spat out a washbasin-sized fireball, smashing straight towards Xie Kuan. The artifact spirit Firebird had awakened a month ago. It was one of the few pieces of good news that Yang Kai had encountered during his long seclusion. After refining a trace of Sun's true fire, not only did the artifact spirit's spirituality increase, its strength had also increased by a lot. At the very least, the flames it could control now were 3 times stronger than when Yang Kai first subdued it. Looking at the washbasin-sized fireball smashing towards him, Xie Kuan's face paled. He felt the threat of death from this fireball. Not daring to be negligent, he hurriedly released his defensive artifact to block it. At the same time, his figure flickered and he fled into the distance. Hong. With a loud bang, the fireball smashed down. Xie Kuan's defensive artifact couldn't withstand it for even a moment and lost most of its spirituality. The surface of the artifact dimmed, and a huge hole appeared on the ground. The edges of the hole were full of signs of melting. This artifact spirit is fierce. Everyone, let's attack together. Xie Kuan knew that he wasn't the artifact spirit's opponent and immediately shouted. Hearing this, the other origin-returning realm masters summoned their artifacts one after another, wanting to work together to deal with the artifact spirit Firebird. Everyone's eyes flashed with ecstasy, and they didn't even care about Yang Kai. They thought that the reason why Yang Kai was so unscrupulous and took the initiative to attack was because of this artifact spirit. As long as they could subdue it, why would they put a trivial third-order Saint King in their eyes? Moreover, if they could subdue this artifact spirit, it would be of great help to them. With such a precious artifact right in front of them, who would be in the mood to care about Yang Kai? Seeing this, Yang Kai sneered and waved his hands. Black fireballs shot out in all directions, bombarding the cultivator who hadn't reached the origin-returning realm. Wherever the demonic flames passed, everything that came into contact with them was set ablaze. The cultivator who reacted quickly fled in all directions, while the slower ones were directly swallowed by the demonic flames. Not even their bones were left behind. In the blink of an eye, the territory of Heavenly Fate City had turned into a sea of flames. The flames were monstrous, almost burning a hole in the sky. "Let's go," Yang Kai shouted to Changqi and Haoen. The two of them understood and immediately summoned their star shuttles, grabbing Yufeng and the others. Circulating their Saint Qi, they carried Yufeng and the others out of Heavenly Fate City. "You want to leave?" How could the goateed old man named Ma Xinyuan give up when he saw Changqi and the others fleeing? The long sword in his hand flickered with swordlight as he slashed out swordlight towards Changqi, and Haoen. Yang Kai sneered and summoned his purple shield. Under the urging of his Saint Qi, a yellow sandstorm enveloped Changqi, Haoen, and the others. At the same time, he hurriedly sent a message to Changqi. Changqi paused for a moment before quickly flying forward again. Together with Haoen, they took Yufeng and the other disciples and disappeared without a trace. Only the burly man who had been whipping them remained, howling in pain. However, this burly man no longer had a human form and looked extremely miserable. Yang Kai flicked his finger and sent out a demonic flame, which hit the burly man's body and made him completely disappear from this world. This guy was from the Xie family, so Yang Kai naturally wouldn't show any mercy. Chapter 1330. Little brat, you dare to kill my Xie family's disciple. Xie Kuan was furious when he saw that the brawny man was killed. So what if I killed him? What are you going to do about it? Yang Kai's expression was ferocious as he wrapped himself in demonic flames, looking like an ancient demon god. As he spoke, he sent a strand of Saint Qi into the Origin King-grade artifact refining furnace floating in the air. The artifact refining furnace immediately began to spin. As it spun, Strange flames flew out of the furnace, transforming into the shape of firebirds that shot out in all directions. These firebirds were like miniature versions of the artifact spirit. They looked the same, but in terms of size and power, they couldn't be compared to a real artifact spirit. This was the fire attribute energy stored in the Origin King grade artifact refining furnace. This artifact refining furnace had been baked in the earth-lung fire vein for tens of thousands of years, so it was naturally not an ordinary object. Yang Kai only needed to release the artifact spirit to deal with enemies before, but this time, facing so many Origin returning realm cultivators, he didn't dare to be careless and even used the power of the artifact refining furnace. The artifact spirit firebird flapped its wings at the same time, forming countless fireballs that smashed down like a swarm of locusts. Under the cooperation of the two, the faces of many Origin returning realm cultivators changed drastically and they hurriedly dodged. Heavenly Fate City, which was already on fire, was even worse. Within a radius of 1,000 meters, all the houses and shops were burned down, and the ground was scorched black. More than a dozen cultivator couldn't dodge in time and were killed on the spot. Waves of Shi descended from the sky as Xie Quan said with a violent look, "Little brat, those two old men are gone. Let's see how a saint king like you can escape." With more than a dozen layers of Shi superimposed on top of each other, Yang Kai could not help feeling as if he was struggling to even move. The two golden threads responded immediately and cut through the invisible Shi, greatly reducing its power. Yang Kai took another step forward, but after this step, his figure suddenly blurred and all the Origin returning realm masters present were unable to see where he had gone. Yang Kai even used his space force. Although he didn't directly tear space, this step had already broken through the constraints of space. When his figure reappeared, he was already behind Xie Quan. "Brother Xie, be careful." The moment Yang Kai appeared, the old man with the goatee cried out in alarm. Xie Quan's complexion also changed greatly, and a layer of white mist suddenly spread out from his body, wrapping around him, making it impossible to see his figure clearly. Yang Kai coldly snorted, and a golden thread flew out, entangling the white mist. Faintly, a soft puffing sound rang out, accompanied by Xie Quan's miserable shriek. The white fog that enveloped him condensed for a moment, before suddenly exploding. His figure that had just disappeared was once again revealed. However, when everyone saw the scene in front of them, they were dumbfounded. Xie Quan stood where he was with an ashen face. He stared blankly at the golden thread that came out of his chest. His face was full of shock, and his eyes were filled with fear and alarm. He did not dare to move. The other end of the golden thread was wrapped around Yang Kai's fingertips. He was easily subdued by Yang Kai. Not only did the others not think of it, even Xie Quan himself didn't think of it. He only knew that the golden thread was extremely strange and extremely sharp. His Saint Chi was unable to resist the penetration of the golden thread, otherwise, it wouldn't have penetrated his body and been captured so easily. A sharp bird cry rang out again as the 100-meter-long firebird artifact spirit flew over to Yang Kai's head, its pair of bright eyes darting about. Every Origin returning realm master who was targeted by this firebird paled. Although they had only fought with this artifact spirit for a short while, everyone could see how terrifying it was. In a one-on-one fight, no one was its opponent, and even if they joined forces, it was impossible to subdue it. Even if this artifact spirit's strength wasn't as good as a third-order Origin returning realm master, it wasn't far off. "If you dare to move, you will die." Yang Kai's voice was like a cold wind from the 9 nether purgatory, blowing into Xie Quan's ears, causing him to feel a chill in the depths of his heart. Seeing Xie Quan standing in place obediently, a look of satisfaction flashed across Yang Kai's face. He looked up at the other Origin returning realm masters and said indifferently, "I said that I came here today for 2 things. The first has been completed, so let's talk about the second. What do you want?" Xie Quan's voice was bitter. "Return all the saint crystals that my Dragon Cave Mountain paid and robbed." Yang Kai coldly snorted. "Your saint crystals are in my space ring. Take them if you want," Xie Quan replied through gritted teeth. He had no choice but to lower his head under the eaves. Yang Kai glanced at his finger and another golden thread flew out and wrapped around Xie Quan's finger. In the next moment, The golden thread flew back to Yang Kai's hand along with the ring. Xie Kuan's face turned pale as blood spurted out. He gritted his teeth and endured the excruciating pain, but he still didn't dare to move. Yang Kai's divine sense swept through the ring and a look of ridicule appeared on his face. He sneered, "Isn't this a little too little?" It wasn't just a little, it was half of what he had. The materials that Dragon Cave Mountain had ordered from Shadow Moon Hall were worth 20 million saint crystals. There was only 10 million in this ring, and the other half was nowhere to be found. Xie Kuan didn't say anything, only turning his gaze to the old man with the goatee, Ma Xin Yuan. Yang Kai immediately understood that they had already divided the saint crystals brought by Yu Feng. The other half of the saint crystals were probably with this old man with the goatee. His gaze suddenly turned cold as he looked at Ma Xin Yuan. The latter looked hesitant and unwilling. Obviously, he wasn't willing to give up the benefits that he had just obtained. That was 10 million saint crystals. If it weren't for the sake of so many saint crystals, why would these people from Shadow Moon Hall help the Xie family deal with Yang Kai? After all, the struggle in the hall was already in an abyss of suffering, and there weren't many people who could be sent out. Seeing that Xie Kuan didn't seem to want to hand over the saint crystals, Yang Kai's face turned cold. A second golden thread flew out and wrapped around Xie Kuan's shoulder. Blood spurted out as Xie Kuan's arm fell off. Everyone's face changed as they looked at Yang Kai in disbelief. They never thought that this little brat would be so ruthless and merciless, dealing such a heavy blow without saying anything. Xie Kuan was also unyielding. First, he didn't make a sound when his finger was cut off by Yang Kai. Now, he didn't make a sound when his arm was cut off. He just looked at Ma Xin Yuan with a ferocious expression. His dry lips twitched slightly as he growled, "Brother Ma, you won't just watch this little brat cut this Xie into pieces, right?" Hearing this, Ma Xin Yuan knew that he couldn't keep the 10 million saint crystals. After all, the Xie family still had Xie Li in Shadow Moon Hall, and his status was higher than his own. If Xie Kuan was really killed by Yang Kai, Xie Li would definitely find trouble with him. So, he gritted his teeth and took off the space ring on his hand. He took out his belongings and threw the space ring to Yang Kai, saying fiercely, "Little brat, the rest of the saint crystals are here. Take them and let them go, or don't blame me for fighting you to the death." They thought that they would definitely succeed this time, but who knew that an artifact spirit would mess up their plans? And this little brat called Yang Kai was also very strange. Even now, Ma Xin Yuan still didn't know how he managed to sneak attack Xie Kuan and subdue him. While cursing Xie Kuan's carelessness in his heart, he also felt some fear towards Yang Kai. If the other party could subdue Xie Kuan like a ghost, it didn't mean that he couldn't kill Ma Xin Yuan. After all, Ma Xin Yuan wasn't much stronger than Xie Kuan. Is he really a third-order Saint King? Ma Xin Yuan suspected that Yang Kai was hiding his cultivation. After all, the other party seemed to be at ease. It was obvious that he still had some tricks up his sleeve. After catching the ring Ma Xin Yuan threw to him, Yang Kai checked it and made sure that he wasn't lying. Then, he nodded lightly and put away the 2 rings. He turned a blind eye to Ma Xin Yuan's harsh words and said indifferently, "I've got the saint crystals back. Now, let's settle another account. What do you want?" Ma Xin Yuan's face darkened. "Old thing, don't play dumb." Yang Kai chuckled, "You detained my Dragon Cave Mountain's disciples and even tortured and whipped them. You don't think I'll just let you off like that, do you? Do you really think I'm that easy to deal with? Hurt them." Ma Xin Yuan's face was filled with rage as he shouted, "If that's the case, boy, you destroyed so many shops in Heavenly Fate City and killed so many disciples. Shouldn't we settle this with you as well? You brought this upon yourself. My Dragon Cave Mountain has cooperated with your noble palace in good faith for the past 2 years and has never owed you any saint crystals, yet you dare to go back on your word. No matter how much you argue about this, no one will stand on your side. What will it take for you to let this go?" Ma Xin Yuan's face was dark. "Compensation." Yang Kai said concisely and coldly snorted, "It's fine if you don't compensate, but I don't know if you can bear the consequences. Boy, you're threatening this old master." Ma Xin Yuan's face was ferocious. "Yes. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes at him. I'll count to 3. If you don't agree, I'll take action. 1. Seeing Yang Kai being so aggressive and even counting down, the faces of all the Origin returning realm masters turned cold. While they were furious, they also felt extremely aggrieved. All of them were only First Order Origin returning realm cultivators. They thought that with so many people, it would be enough to crush Dragon Cave Mountain, but the development of the situation was not something they could control. 2. As soon as this number came out, Xie Quan shouted anxiously, Brother Ma. Ma Xin Yuan glanced at him from afar and said with a flicker in his eyes, Brother Xie, these people were captured by your Xie family disciples, and they were also injured by your Xie family disciples. This matter has nothing to do with our Shadow Moon Hall, right? Xie Quan's expression froze for a moment before a trace of sadness appeared on his face. How could he not know that Ma Xin Yuan was telling the truth? The main force in dealing with Dragon Cave Mountain this time was still the Xie family, but Ma Xin Yuan's words were too hurtful. After all, the reason why the Xie family took action was because they were instructed by the higher-ups of the Shadow Moon Hall to take the opportunity to test Qian Tong's reaction. Ma Xin Yuan should not have stayed out of this matter. 3. After Yang Kai finished counting, he grinned, It seems that you're not willing to compensate. Since that's the case, I'll do it myself. As he spoke, the golden thread in his hand trembled slightly. In a flash of golden light, Xie Quan was turned into minced meat without a sound. The smell of blood filled the air. All the Origin returning realm cultivators were dumbfounded, their expressions extremely strange. Chapter 1331. No one would have thought that Yang Kai would actually kill Xie Quan, who was captured by him. The reason why these Origin returning realm masters did not act rashly was firstly because they were afraid of the Firebird artifact spirit, and secondly because of Xie Quan. Xie Quan was subdued by Yang Kai, so naturally, they were afraid of provoking Yang Kai to kill him. After all, they had witnessed Yang Kai's ruthlessness before. If Xie Quan really died, they would not be able to explain it to Xie Li. But now, this concern was gone, and the reason was actually Yang Kai himself. This was both surprising and infuriating. Only now did everyone realize that they had completely underestimated this young man's madness and arrogance. Without Xie Quan as a hostage, did he think that he, a Saint King, could stand here and talk to so many Origin returning realm masters as equals? When they thought about how the deaths of Xie Quan and the Xie family disciples would enrage Xie Li, they could no longer remain calm. Ma Xin Yuan pointed at Yang Kai from afar, pointing his finger repeatedly. He seemed to be so angry that he could not speak. After a long while, he gritted his teeth and said, Boy, you're dead. You're really dead this time. Brother Ma, don't talk nonsense with him. Hurry up and capture him and hand him over to Manager Xie, someone shouted coldly from the side. With just you. Yang Kai laughed wildly. If Chang Qi, Yu Feng, and the others were still here, he would have some concerns, but he was the only one left. Even if there was a third-order Origin returning realm master here, they would not be able to stop him. He cultivated the Tao of space, so he could tear space and escape at any time. This time was not like the last time in the corpse cave. Not only did he have yang inflammation, but he was also facing a 1,000-year-old corpse general. There were only 7 or 8 first-order Origin returning realm masters here. Wanting to stop him was simply a fool's dream. I'll first destroy Heavenly Fate City, then I'll settle accounts with you. Yang Kai's voice suddenly turned cold. He pointed his hand and shouted, Burn! The Firebird artifact spirit received the order and let out a long cry. The flames on its body rolled, and the fire attribute spiritual energy between heaven and earth once again gathered into its body. In the blink of an eye, its body seemed to have grown a lot bigger. Seeing this scene, many Origin returning realm masters paled and began circulating their Saint Qi around their bodies before summoning their defensive artifacts to protect themselves. In the next moment, the Firebird opened its mouth, and a ball of dazzling light was faintly visible in its mouth. Soon after, it spat it out. A beam of fiery light with astonishing power shot out. The high temperature contained within almost melted the space. It made one's hair stand on end as it flew straight to the ground. The artifact spirit's target wasn't anyone, but the largest shop in the vicinity. Yang Kai had made up his mind to turn Heavenly Fate City upside down before deciding what to do next. The people of Dragon Cave Mountain had been bullied to such an extent, so naturally, Yang Kai would not let this matter rest. If he were to shrink back this time, it would only leave an impression of weakness, which would only make things worse in the future. After all, this was the first conflict Dragon Cave Mountain had faced since it was built. Before the flame reached the shop was set ablaze by the high temperature, and in the next moment, a beam of light suddenly shot out from the distance and entered the shop. Immediately after, a thin layer of energy barrier wrapped around the building tightly. This was the defensive barrier of this shop, a kind of protective spirit array. As long as one was a slightly larger shop in Heavenly Fate City, it would have one, but depending on the strength of one's financial resources, the power of this spirit array would vary. The barrier of this shop was obviously not weak. The energy barrier surrounding it gave off a faint green light that rippled like water. At a glance, it was obvious it had been carefully arranged. Even so, when the flames came into contact with the restriction, it shook the restriction and almost broke it. The green light dimmed in an instant, and it only lasted for less than 2 breaths before shattering. The flame did not diminish in the slightest as it rushed straight towards the shop. At that moment, an artifact that looked like a round bowl suddenly flew over and expanded to a radius of several dozen meters, directly blocking the entrance to the shop. Caught off guard, the flame rushed into the round bowl. Immediately, a blue light bloomed from the round bowl, gathering the flame and suppressing it. A middle-aged man dressed like a scholar appeared strangely above the round bowl, his expression extremely dignified as he poured a few streams of Saint Chi into it. With the help of his divine sense, the round bowl quickly shrank back to its original size. The middle-aged scholar waved his hand and took back the round bowl, staring blankly at the tumbling flames inside with an ugly expression. "You've finally come out." Yang Kai coldly snorted but did not do anything else, simply standing in place and staring at this middle-aged scholar. When he first stepped into Heavenly Fate City, he had already noticed the existence of this man. After all, this man was a third-order origin returning realm cultivator. Besides him, there was no other master in the entire Heavenly Fate City that Yang Kai was afraid of. Otherwise, he would not have been so unscrupulous before. What puzzled him was that no matter what he did, the other party had no intention of showing up. However, Yang Kai had been paying attention to him. Now, when the shop was about to be destroyed, this man finally could not help but show up. Yang Kai did not know whether this person was an enemy or a friend, but he instinctively felt that the other party should not have any malice towards him, otherwise, he would not have been able to hold back long ago. Blue Jade Bowl. City Lord Fei. The cultivator of the First Order Origin returning realm shouted one after another. Hearing them shout, Yang Kai immediately understood who this middle-aged scholar was. Heavenly Fate City's City Lord, Fei Ji II. Yang Kai had never dealt with this person before, but he had heard of his name. More than 2 years ago, when he had a conflict with the Haiku family and the Shu family, the two families had come to the City Lord's mansion to ask for help. Unfortunately, in the end, the two families were unable to meet Fei Ji II. However, the patriarch of the Haiku family, Yi Yan, happened to meet Xie Hong when in the City Lord's mansion and dragged Xie Hong when into that conflict. Yang Kai knew about him because he heard about him from Wu Yi, but he did not expect that this person was actually a third-order origin returning realm cultivator. Looking at this person, Yang Kai finally showed a hint of fear. The blue jade bowl in the other party's hand was actually able to absorb the Firebird's attack, so it was obviously not of a low grade. Furthermore, the aura of this person was extremely deep, not much worse than Qian Tong. He could do whatever he wanted under the watchful eyes of 7 or 8 first-order origin returning realm cultivators, but that did not mean that he could do the same in front of a third-order origin returning realm master. However, before he could figure out this person's attitude, Yang Kai did not plan to retreat. He still had a trump card that he had not used yet. Whether it was the Space Blade or the Blossoming Lotus secret technique, he was confident that he would be able to rely on them. After the goateed old man and the others recognized Fei Ji II, their expressions changed slightly and they all rushed forward to salute him. Ma Xinyuan's eyes flashed as he said, City Lord Master, didn't I hear that you were in retreat to cultivate a secret technique? Could it be that you have already succeeded? Fei Ji too glanced at him leisurely and said indifferently, why? Is Steward Ma very concerned about this City Lord's secret technique? I wouldn't dare. This subordinate was just asking casually. Ma Xinyuan's face turned red and he did not dare to say anything more. Fei Ji too swept his gaze across the faces of the First Order Origin returning realm cultivators and mocked, if this City Lord did not come out, would you tear down my heavenly fate city? City Lord Master, please forgive us. Everyone was shocked when they heard this and hurriedly cupped their fists. One of them stepped forward and explained, but there are some reasons for this. The reason why the shops in the city are in such a state is not because of us, but because of this brat's arrogance. He killed and set fire to this place. City Lord Master, please understand. As he spoke, he pointed at Yang Kai from afar. Fei Ji too turned his head to look at Yang Kai and found that the other party was looking back at him without fear. He could not help but click his tongue in amazement. At the same time, his face darkened as he scolded, a bunch of wastes. You can't even take down a Saint King realm brat. Do you still have the face to live in this world? You call yourselves Origin returning realm cultivators. I think you've all been living like dogs all these years. The 7 or 8 Origin returning realm cultivators all lowered their heads and did not say a word, feeling extremely sullen in their hearts. Fei Ji too scolded them for a while before chuckling meaningfully, Brat, you've got guts. You dare to kill and set fire to my heavenly fate city. You don't put this city lord in your eyes, do you? Senior is wise. This group of people went back on their word and bullied me too much. Junior had no choice but to resist a little. Yang Kai said indifferently. Resist a little. Fei Ji too's eyes twitched. He had been hiding in the dark and had seen everything from beginning to end. All he saw was Yang Kai's infinite arrogance and the group of Origin returning realm cultivators being toyed with in the palm of his hand, so how could they resist? Thinking to himself that this brat was lying with his eyes wide open, Yang Kai said with a cold expression, I just heard you say that you wanted to destroy my heavenly fate city. Yang Kai grinned, Senior, please be magnanimous. Junior was just angry and spoke without thinking. Senior Master is magnanimous and won't take Junior's words seriously, right? Fei Ji too took a deep breath and sneered, this city lord doesn't care whether you spoke without thinking or not. A man must keep his word. Today, either you really destroy my heavenly fate city, or this city lord will give you an explanation. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving this place safely. Hearing him say this, Yang Kai's face sank slightly, but after pondering for a moment, he smiled and said, since Senior says so, then Junior will be bold enough to ask for Senior's instruction. With such a master here, he definitely couldn't continue to cause trouble. However, he vaguely heard a different message from the other party's words. This Fei Ji too really didn't seem to be an enemy. The other Origin returning realm cultivators weren't fools. How could they not understand the meaning behind Fei Ji too's words? The City Lord Master clearly wanted to bury the hatchet with the other party. Ma Xinyuan and the others were shocked. Just as they were about to speak up to stop him, Fei Ji too said loudly, You've killed people and burned down many of my shops. Even if my Shadow Moon Hall was in the wrong, you've already vented your anger. Originally, it would have been fine if we stopped here, but I can't just let you leave like this. Otherwise, if word gets out, outsiders will only think that this city lord is a coward. Junior understands. Yang Kai gently nodded. Chapter 1332. Seeing that Yang Kai was so tactful, Fei Ji too couldn't help but reveal a look of satisfaction. Previously, when he was secretly observing him, he vaguely felt that this little brat was unruly, but he didn't expect him to be such a clever person. At least his efforts were not in vain. Many of the shops in the city had been damaged and burned down, but they were dead after all, so there was no need to investigate. As long as they were rebuilt afterwards, it would be fine. As for the dozen or so people who had died, most of them were disciples of the Xie family and had nothing to do with Fei Ji too. Even if everyone here died, he wouldn't care. After pondering for a moment, Fei Ji too said, This city lord will give you two options. It's up to you which one you choose. Yang Kai pretended to listen attentively. First, take out the saint crystals you just obtained as compensation. You can't just walk away from murder and arson. Those saint crystals are more than enough as compensation. What do you think? As soon as he said this, the goateed old man and the others' expressions changed slightly. They immediately understood that their worries were actually true. City Lord Fei really wanted to turn a big problem into a small one, and a small one into nothing. Then, they thought of some of the rumors in the hall and immediately felt anxious, not daring to say anything. Yang Kai's eyes revealed a look of surprise. He tilted his head and thought for a moment before smiling. Senior's suggestion is not inappropriate, but please forgive this junior for being so bold as to reject it. Fei Ji too narrowed his eyes and looked at Yang Kai with some surprise. To be honest, the reason he proposed this kind of compensation was because he was the strongest person here. Furthermore, as a city lord, he felt that Ma Xinyuan and the others wouldn't refute him. How could he have known that this little brat wouldn't appreciate his good intentions? He immediately became angry and scolded Yang Kai for not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. He coldly snorted, "You didn't hear what the second option was before you dared to reject it." Yang Kai said solemnly, "One of the purposes of this junior's visit was to retrieve the saint crystals that were stolen. Now that I've obtained them, there is no reason to return them. Senior, please tell me what the second option is." Fei Ji too stared at him for a while before saying, "Since you are so opinionated, then this city lord won't persuade you. The second option is simpler. Don't dodge or evade. Take a blow from me, and as long as you don't die, I'll let you leave. Don't dodge or evade." Yang's eyes narrowed, but Ma Xinyuan and the others were overjoyed when they heard this sentence. Fei Ji too was already at the peak of the third-order origin returning realm. In terms of strength, he was almost on par with Qian Tong. With such a master personally taking action, even if it was just a single blow, that arrogant brat wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. Perhaps he would even die under this blow. While Ma Xinyuan and the others were secretly overjoyed, they also thought that they had misunderstood Fei Ji too's intentions. It turned out that he didn't intend to let this brat leave safely. It was only because of the difference in status and cultivation that it wasn't convenient for him to bully the weak. But since it was the other party who took the initiative to do so, there was nothing more to say. They immediately looked towards Yang Kai with Schadenfreude, secretly anticipating the start of a good show. "You don't dare!" Fei Ji too looked at Yang Kai mockingly. "Why wouldn't I dare?" Yang Kai's eyes flashed brilliantly. With his current strength, he really couldn't deal with a third-order origin returning realm master, but if it was just a single blow, it shouldn't be a problem. Moreover, even if he was injured, with his restorative ability, it shouldn't take long for him to fully recover. This was a good opportunity to test how far he was from a cultivator of this level. On Shadowed Star, the peak of the third-order origin returning realm was the strongest. If he could really escape unscathed from Fei Ji too, then he could re-examine his own strength. "Little brat, you've got guts." Fei Ji too's gentle face suddenly showed a grin as he shouted, "I hope you don't regret this." Yang Kai's face turned cold. Without saying a word, he stretched out his hand and pointed. The firebird hovering above his head let out a crisp cry and turned into a ball of fire that wrapped around his body. The red flames seemed to flow and distort the space around him. Yang Kai then summoned his purple shield and poured his Saint Chi into it, summoning a sandstorm that quickly submerged his figure. In the next moment, a shield condensed from black flames appeared in front of Yang Kai. This was the grand heavenly shield condensed from his own Saint Chi. Just as these three defenses were completed, Fei Ji too released a terrifying Saint Chi fluctuation. Immediately after, he took a step forward and, without anyone being able to see him clearly, appeared 10 meters in front of Yang Kai. Immediately, a tiger's roar suddenly rang out from his body and a huge tiger head suddenly appeared above his body. This tiger head was illusory when it first appeared, but as Fei Ji too poured his Saint Chi into it, it gradually showed signs of solidifying. At the same time, an unparalleled ferocious aura radiated from the tiger head. Ma Xinyuan and the others who were watching from the sidelines all paled and quickly retreated. Although Fei Ji too did not deliberately target them, the murderous intent radiating from the tiger head was like a real blade that cut through their bodies, causing them to shiver. The city Lord Master was serious. Everyone was overjoyed. "Little brat, be careful," Fei Ji too shouted. The tiger head floating above his head suddenly opened its bloody mouth and, like a ferocious tiger descending from the mountain, pounced towards Yang Kai with an unstoppable momentum. Yang Kai's face sank as he frantically pushed his Saint Chi. In the next moment, the solidified tiger head collided with the outermost grand heavenly shield. A series of cracking sounds rang out, and the dozens of grand heavenly shields were like paper, unable to withstand a single blow. The tiger head, on the other hand, did not lose any momentum as it pounced towards the second layer of the sandstorm. The sandstorm was driven by the power contained within the purple shields, so it was extremely powerful. As soon as the tiger head fell into it, it was stopped by the power of the wind and sand. Its figure suddenly became sluggish and showed signs of stopping. However, Yang Kai was not happy. Instead, he was shocked and his face became even more solemn. Fei Ji too sneered. As he urged his divine sense, the tiger head suddenly spat out a gloomy light. As soon as the gloomy light appeared, it exploded and tore a hole in the sandstorm. At the same time, the tiger head took advantage of the opening and the sandstorm could no longer stop it. In the blink of an eye, the huge tiger head arrived in front of Yang Kai. It opened its bloody mouth and bit towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai didn't dare to neglect, and with a single thought, the Firebird artifact spirit's protective barrier surrounding his body began to spin rapidly, making him look like he was on fire, exuding an astonishingly high temperature. The tiger's roar and the bird's cry intertwined and lingered on. Ma Xin Yuan and the others craned their necks to see if Yang Kai was seriously injured or dead. However, their vision was blocked by the sandstorm and they could not see anything at all. They were so anxious that they could not help but stomp their feet. However, a few people were able to deduce from Fei Ji too's surprised expression that Yang Kai was not seriously injured. With a boom, the sandstorm suddenly dispersed and once again condensed into a shield that flashed with purple light and flew to the side. At the same time, Yang Kai's figure also retreated quickly. His face was slightly pale. The Firebird artifact spirit that had been circling around him had unknowingly returned to hovering above his head. Although the tiger head's color had dimmed significantly, it still chased closely behind Yang Kai, as if it wanted to kill him. In mid-air, Yang Kai's face turned ruthless. He waved his hands and a series of pitch-black spatial blades shot out towards the tiger head. Seeing this, Fei Ji too frowned slightly. Then, as if he had thought of something, his expression changed and he cried out in alarm, "Stop!" As soon as he finished speaking, he had already rushed out and arrived in front of the tiger head. He reached out with one hand and sucked the tiger head into his body. With the other hand, he took out the blue jade bowl. A dazzling blue light blossomed from the bowl and went towards the spatial blades. Asterisk kai 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 kai. Asterisk the blue light instantly dimmed, causing Fei Ji too's face to twitch as he couldn't help showing a pained expression. This blue jade bowl was an artifact Yang Kai had refined for many years and was also the one he relied on the most. The blue light stored in this bowl possessed all kinds of strange powers. In the past, Yang Kai had used this bowl's blue light to avert danger many times, but now, he clearly felt that the blue light in his bowl had actually decreased somewhat, and he couldn't tell where it had gone. Thinking about the strange blade that was emitting spatial fluctuations, Yang Kai's face became extremely ugly. It would take him at least several years to replenish the blue light he had lost, and he would also have to consume some precious treasures. At this moment, Yang Kai even had thoughts of killing Yang Kai. Even when facing an opponent in the same realm, no one had been able to make him suffer such a big loss. Yang Kai had never expected a mere Saint King realm to be able to achieve such a feat. When Fei Ji too summoned the blue jade bowl, Yang Kai didn't attack again and instead retreated lightly, taking back his shield. Taking a few deep breaths, Yang Kai's pale face finally restored a trace of redness. Calmly staring at Fei Ji too, his brow furrowed slightly, his expression slightly strange. "You." Fei Ji too looked at his blue jade bowl and then at Yang Kai, his face becoming extremely ferocious. Yang Kai chuckled, "Senior, you've made your second move. Fei Jitu's expression froze for a moment before he smiled bitterly, staring deeply at Yang Kai before waving his hand dispiritedly. Go, go. Don't ever set foot in my heavenly fate city again, or don't blame this city lord for being impolite. Many thanks for Senior's leniency. Ien, if possible, I would like to ask Senior to return the flame you took away before. Yang Kai looked at the blue jade bowl in Yang Kai's hand and said faintly. Fei Jitu's face twitched as he stretched out his hand and poured his Saint Qi into the blue jade bowl. A ball of flame immediately flew out and the firebird artifact spirit opened its beak and sucked it into its beak before diving into Yang Kai's body and disappearing. It wasn't that Fei Jitu was easy to deal with, but he felt that the flame he had collected before was a bit strange. He couldn't refine it at all, and if it was sealed in the blue jade bowl for a long time, not only would it affect the power of this artifact, it might also cause some harm to the blue jade bowl, so naturally he was willing to do this favor. Farewell. Yang Kai cupped his fists and gloomily looked at Ma Xinyuan and the others, as if he wanted to commit their faces to memory. After sneering meaningfully, he summoned his star shuttle and flew off towards Dragon Cave Mountain. Chapter 1333. In the ruins of Heavenly Fate City, Ma Xinyuan and the others stood quietly in place, their faces gloomy and the atmosphere extremely solemn. They never thought that Yang Kai would really be able to survive a single blow from Fei Jitu and escape unscathed. They all saw the power of that move and knew that Fei Jitu did not go easy on him. None of the origin returning realm masters here could safely withstand such a move, but it was blocked by a third-order Saint King youth. While Ma Xinyuan and the others were shocked, they also felt a deep sense of dread towards Yang Kai. That little brat was only a third-order Saint King, yet his performance was already so eye-catching. What would happen if he really broke through to the origin returning realm? Everyone present were all old foxes, so they naturally understood the principle of nipping danger in the bud. Especially when they saw Kai Yang's deep gaze before he left, they didn't doubt that in the future, once his cultivation reached a certain level, he would seek revenge. After hesitating for a while, Ma Xinyuan cupped his fists and stammered, City Lord Master, are we really going to let him go just like that? If we're not going to let him go, then what do you want? Fei Jitu glared coldly at Ma Xinyuan as he had nowhere to vent his anger. But that little brat killed the Xie families. The Xie family. Fei Jitu coldly snorted, you also know that he was from the Xie family. What does the life or death of the Xie family have to do with me? Ma Xinyuan's expression became gloomy and he did not dare to say anything more. If you don't want to let him go, you can chase after him now, as long as you have the confidence to keep him here. City Lord Master must be joking. The group looked extremely embarrassed and no one dared to mention Yang Kai again. Since you don't have confidence in your own strength, then stay put. If anyone dares to question this City Lord's words, then don't blame this City Lord for not giving you face. Also, do you really think that old fart Chen Tong won't be able to come back? Hehe, you better pray that you made the right choice this time. Otherwise, you won't have a place in the Shadow Moon Hall in the future. The group of people looked at each other in dismay. Just as they were about to inquire more carefully, they saw that Fei Jitu had already flicked his sleeve and disappeared on the spot. Brother Ma, what should we do? From what City Lord Fei said just now, there seems to be some twists and turns in the struggle within the hall. Is it rumored that Elder Chen, Someone looked at Ma Xinyuan and asked. That's right, Brother Ma, didn't you say this time's plan was foolproof? If not, how could we have come here to cooperate with the Xie family to deal with a mere Saint King? Someone else asked. Ma Xinyuan's face turned ashen as he impatiently said, if you ask this old master, who should this old master ask? This old master only heard it from his superiors. How could I know the specific situation? If you really want to know, you might as well ask Manager Xie and see what kind of answer he has. Manager Xie. Hearing Ma Xinyuan's evasive words, everyone knew that they had been fooled this time. Regret filled their hearts, but when they thought about Chen Tong's ability, they all paled, cupped their fists, and left. Dragon Cave Mountain. Yang Kai returned with a pale face. As soon as he entered the mountain, he saw Wu Yi, Yang Yang, and Chen Yu waiting for him. Seeing him appear, The three women looked happy and quickly came forward to greet him. "Are you hurt?" Wu Yi couldn't help calling out when she saw Yang Kai's pale face. "It's nothing serious. How are you, Feng, and the others?" Yang Kai waved his hand and asked. "They're already healing and should be fully recovered soon. If you hadn't come back, Foreign Elder Chang and Foreign Elder How would have made another trip to Heavenly Fate City." Yang Kai gently nodded. "Tell them there's no need to go. This matter ends here. Shadow Moon Hall shouldn't be making any more moves, but for now, try not to go out as much as possible. Be careful of the Xie family's actions." "I know, I'll keep an eye on them and make sure they don't go out," Wu Yi quickly responded, then immediately said with concern, "You also need to heal quickly." Yang Kai nodded and walked towards his cave mansion. Fei Ji too was worthy of being a peak Third Order Origin returning Realm Master. Although that move didn't seem to be anything special, Yang Kai still understood its fierceness. However, his opponent hadn't used his full strength, something Yang Kai knew. Being able to injure him without using his full strength, it seemed that the gap between him and a Third Order Origin returning Realm Master was still quite obvious. Taking out a few bottles of pills from his space ring, Yang Kai poured out a few and stuffed them into his mouth before closing his eyes and adjusting his breathing. Yang Kai's injuries were not serious, but his aura was somewhat unstable. After meditating for half a day, Yang Kai had recovered. After all, the golden blood in his body had a powerful restorative ability, so this kind of minor injury was nothing to him. Releasing his divine sense and realizing that it was already late at night, Yang Kai's expression changed slightly as he quietly got up, opened the cave mansion's barrier, and quietly left Dragon Cave Mountain, using his movement skill to fly straight towards Heavenly Fate City. A short time later, Yang Kai arrived in the city and followed the route in his memory all the way to the location of the City Lord's mansion. After another cup of tea worth of time, Yang Kai appeared in the City Lord's mansion. Although this was his first time here, he was able to grasp the situation of the entire City Lord's mansion with his divine sense. Tonight, the City Lord's mansion was a bit strange. It was quiet all around, with not a single person in sight. Even the cultivator who was usually in charge of guarding the place had been removed tonight. The people in the City Lord's mansion did not know why this was happening, only that it was an order from the City Lord's master that no one was allowed to walk around the mansion tonight. Once discovered, they would be killed without mercy. Under this strict order, naturally no one dared to offend the dignity of the City Lord's master. Aware of this, Yang Kai swaggered around the City Lord's mansion. After a few turns, he arrived in front of a room inside the City Lord's mansion. Just as he stood there, Fei Ji Tu's voice came from inside the room, "Since you're here, come in and sit down." Hearing this, Yang Kai smiled slightly and generously pushed open the door and entered. Inside the room, Fei Ji Tu sat on a chair and looked at the door with a smile. After Yang Kai walked in, he waved his hand and closed the door again with a burst of Saint Qi. Yang Kai's expression did not change. He walked directly to another chair beside Fei Ji Tu and sat down calmly. "I knew that you were very bold during the day, but I didn't expect that I still underestimated you. Aren't you afraid that this is a dragon's pool and a tiger's den? It's easy to enter, but difficult to leave." Fei Ji Tu sneered. "Senior is joking. If you really wanted to deal with this junior, you wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Just do it directly," Yang Kai replied lightly. Fei Ji Tu's eyes flashed and he nodded. "Good, this old man Qian Tong didn't misjudge you. You're quite the character. May I ask why Senior sent a message to this junior during the day?" Yang Kai asked with a solemn expression. During the day, after he fought with Fei Ji Tu, the other party had suddenly sent him a message and asked him to come to the City Lord's mansion again at night, which really puzzled Yang Kai. Although he didn't know the whole story, he could guess that it had something to do with the recent changes in Shadow Moon Hall. "If I said that I wanted to ask you for a favor, would you believe me?" "Help?" Yang Kai frowned. "What kind of help?" "Let's not talk about this for now. First, I want to ask you, what do you think about the recent events in Shadow Moon Hall?" Fei Ji Tu asked in a low voice with a dignified expression. Yang Kai shook his head. Junior has been in retreat on Dragon Cave Mountain all this time and does not know much about the outside world. I hope Senior can enlighten me. So that's how it is. Fei Ji too gently nodded. In that case, this city lord won't beat around the bush with you. The reason why your Dragon Cave Mountain is being targeted this time is actually because of the internal strife in Shadow Moon Hall. In this regard, my Shadow Moon Hall owes you. After all, over the past few years, your Dragon Cave Mountain and my Shadow Moon Hall have cooperated very well. Both sides have benefited greatly from each other. However, the reason why your Dragon Cave Mountain can exist and live in peace is mainly because of Qian Tong's protection. Now, Qian Tong has encountered some trouble and some people want to deal with him, so they took advantage of your grievances with the Xie family to deal with Dragon Cave Mountain first to test Qian Tong's reaction. After saying this, Fei Ji too stared at Yang Kai, but unexpectedly did not see any surprise on his face, asking in amazement, "You already knew?" Yang Kai chuckled, "I guessed." "Amazing." Fei Ji too's eyes flashed with a hint of praise. "Since you guessed this a long time ago, it's much easier to explain. Simply put, Shadow Moon Hall was originally divided into two factions, one headed by Qian Tong and the other headed by an elder named Feng Zhen. The two of them had different philosophies and were often at odds with one another. Moreover, one of these two elders was in charge of artifact refining and artifacts while the other was in charge of alchemy and alchemy. The other elders and stewards who were subordinate to these two were basically balanced, so over the years, although these two factions had some conflicts, there was no major friction. But now, because of an incident, this balance has been broken. Grandmaster Ji Lin's death. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed as he remembered this matter. Qian Tong and Grandmaster Ji Lin had a very good personal relationship, so with Grandmaster Ji Lin's death, Qian Tong's side had lost a heavyweight, so it was inevitable that the other faction would become disloyal. Yang Kai thought his guess was right, but Fei Ji too sneered and shook his head. Grandmaster Ji Lin's death was just a trigger. What really caused these two factions to fall out was something else. What is it? Yang Kai was stunned. Speaking of which, you've also seen that thing before, Fei Ji too whispered, the red candle fruit. That's it. Yang Kai suddenly realized. In Shadow Moon Hall, the Temple Master's cultivation isn't the strongest. The truly powerful ones are Qian Tong and Feng Zhen. Both of them are most likely to break through to the Origin King realm, but there is only a small piece of the red candle fruit, so everyone wants it. How do you think the situation will develop? If that's the case, then it makes sense. Yang Kai's face flashed a look of understanding. 2 years ago, when Liu Yang Sandfield opened, a red candle fruit appeared in the third layer. Although it was cut into several pieces by Leng Qing of Star Emperor Mountain, Wei Guchang and Dong Xiena managed to grab a piece and bring it back to Shadow Moon Hall. The temptation of a supreme treasure rumored to be able to help an origin returning realm cultivator break through the shackles of cultivation was too great, so it wasn't surprising that the original balance in Shadow Moon Hall was broken. Chapter 1334. Ha! In fact, Qian Tong is not the kind of person who likes to fight with others, but the red candle fruit is too important. If he can really break through to the Origin King realm, then my Shadow Moon Hall will become the #1 great force on Shadowed Star. Even Star Emperor Mountain will not be able to compete with my Shadow Moon Hall. Although this hope is very slim, it is still hope. Since that old fart Qian Tong thinks so, Feng Zhen naturally thinks so as well. As a result, the conflict between the two sides broke out and Shadow Moon Hall is now in a state of chaos. Fei Ji too said with some distress, if this matter is not handled properly, my Shadow Moon Hall will suffer heavy losses at best, but at worst, it may even be destroyed. Is it that serious? Yang Kai's face changed slightly. The grievances between the elders and stewards of Qian Tong's faction have been building up for a long time now, and it has always been the sect master who has been suppressing them, so there hasn't been any major trouble, but this time, even the sect master is powerless to do anything. In fact, if it were not for the Hall Master's advanced age, this red candle fruit would have been the most suitable for him to take, but the Hall Master could not bear to waste the medicinal efficacies of the red candle fruit, so he did not use it. If an internal war really breaks out in my Shadow Moon Hall, boy, do you understand what it means to say that no egg can remain unbroken when the nest is overturned? Yang Kai's eyes twitched. How could he not understand what Fei Ji too was trying to say? If Shadow Moon Hall really fell apart, Dragon Cave Mountain would bear the brunt of it. After all, Dragon Cave Mountain was still within the sphere of influence of Shadow Moon Hall, so no one could say what would happen when the time came. But soon, Yang Kai's expression became indifferent as he stared at Fei Ji too and said, "Senior does not need to make it sound so scary. Junior only wants to know which faction you belong to." "Me?" Fei Ji too raised his brow and could not help laughing. "This city lord is tired of fighting and scheming against others, so I asked the Hall Master to place me in Heavenly Fate City as the city lord." "Which faction do you think I belong to?" Yang Kai gently nodded and said with a smile that was not a smile, "I heard Senior's words were filled with concern and worry for Elder Chen, so I thought you and Elder Chen were on the same side." "Nonsense. Chen Tong, that old fart." Fei Ji too coldly snorted, seemingly wanting to curse, but halfway through his words, he stopped and waved his hand. "Forget it. In short, I owe Chen Tong a big favor, so this time I want to repay him." "What does that have to do with me?" Yang Kai couldn't help but frown. Why did Senior call this junior here so late at night? Fei Ji too stared at Yang Kai and said with a solemn expression, "Chen Tong is in trouble." Yang Kai's eyes narrowed. "You don't look like an ungrateful person. Your Dragon Cave Mountain has been able to develop steadily these past few years thanks to Chen Tong. Don't think he hasn't taken care of you. If it weren't for him sitting in Heavenly Fate City, I'm afraid you would have already been eaten to the bone." A few trivial youngsters who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth actually dare to take over a mountain and call themselves kings. TMPH, how inexplicable. Let's not talk about our Dragon Cave Mountain for the time being. City Lord Fei, please tell me about Elder Chen. If there is anything I can help with, I will not refuse, Yang Kai said lightly. There were some things he didn't need to be reminded of as he was well aware of. The fact that Dragon Cave Mountain had been able to remain so stable these past few years was indeed due to Chen Tong's care, but hearing Fei Ji too say this still made Yang Kai feel a little uncomfortable and his tone immediately became cold. Fei Ji too didn't seem to mind and simply said, "What I'm about to tell you is something only a few people know about. This matter is of great importance, so please don't leak it out." After exhorting Yang Kai, Fei Ji too immediately began explaining. After listening to Fei Ji too's explanation, Yang Kai learned that Chen Tong had been missing for nearly half a year. Calculating the time, around the time he and Yang Yang set off for Colored Glass Sect, Chen Tong had already disappeared. As for where Chen Tong had gone, there were many different theories. Some people said he was in a life-or-death retreat to comprehend a secret technique, others said he had gone out in search of opportunities and encountered an accident, while others said he didn't want Shadow Moon Hall to fall apart and had gone into hiding. However, no matter which theory it was, no one could prove it. However, with Shadow Moon Hall on the verge of collapse and the internal strife in the hall, Chen Tong's disappearance was truly puzzling. It was precisely because he had disappeared at such a critical juncture that Fengzhen's faction was becoming more and more rampant and bold. Now, in Shadow Moon Hall, although there were still several elders who could join forces to contend with Fengzhen, without Chen Tong, such a key figure, they had fallen into a disadvantageous position. If Chen Tong did not return for some time, the consequences would be unimaginable. This time, Ma Xin Yuan and the others had joined forces with the Xie family to deal with Dragon Cave Mountain, which was also the final test Fengzhen's faction had of Chen Tong. They wanted to see if he had really gone into hiding, so they could use this opportunity to deal with Dragon Cave Mountain to force him to show himself. Although the result of this test was the death of one of the Xie family's origin-returning realm masters, Fengzhen's faction should be very satisfied. Chen Tong had not appeared from beginning to end, which was enough to show that something must have happened to him and he was too busy to spare any attention. Once this result was passed back, Fengzhen's faction would definitely make a big move. "Where is Elder Chen now?" Yang Kai frowned and asked. "In an ancient ruin." Fei Ji too replied in a deep voice. "An ancient ruin." Yang Kai's eyes lit up. "Yes, but whether he is alive or dead, I don't know." Fei Ji too let out a long sigh. "The last time I heard from him was half a month ago. He used this thing to send a message." Saying so, Fei Ji too flicked his finger and a milky white light suddenly appeared at his fingertip and flew directly towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai reached out and caught the milky white light in his palm. Looking at it, he could not help but click his tongue in amazement. This milky white light was actually a kind of insect that looked like a snow silkworm. It was only an inch long and its entire body was white and smooth, with tiny blood vessels vaguely visible inside. However, when Yang Kai swept his divine sense across this strange insect's body, a message suddenly came from inside and rushed straight into Yang Kai's mind. Yang Kai was startled, but he quickly calmed down and listened quietly. The message was indeed left by Qian Tong in this insect. Through his perception, Yang Kai immediately understood Qian Tong's situation. Indeed, as Fei Jitu said, Qian Tong was trapped in an ancient ruin and could not escape. He had no other choice but to send this insect to Sky Fortune City to ask for Fei Jitu's help. This insect is called a breath insect and can be considered an ancient variant. It doesn't have much use and is only suitable for sending messages. Because it can ignore all barriers and restrictions, it is very convenient to use. Don't be fooled by its bloated appearance, it can move very quickly. Fei Jitu explained after Yang Kai finished his investigation. Yang Kai gently nodded, a dignified look flashing across his face as he returned the breath insect to Fei Jitu. From the investigation just now, Qian Tong's condition was not very optimistic. The message left in the breath insect seemed to have been left after he was injured. After such a long time, Yang Kai did not know how he was doing. City Lord Fei, may I ask why Elder Qian went to explore the ancient ruin at such a critical juncture? Yang Kai asked, puzzled. Fei Jitu coldly snorted, how would I know what he's thinking? After a pause, he continued, but I guess he doesn't want the conflict in the Shadow Moon Hall to really erupt, so he wants to find a balance to stabilize the current situation. You also know that he had a good personal relationship with Grandmaster Ji Lin before, and with Grandmaster Ji Lin's prestige and connections, he was able to completely suppress Fengzhen, but now that Grandmaster Ji Lin has passed away and the other side has an origin-grade alchemist, the balance naturally no longer exists. The ancient ruin was discovered by Grandmaster Ji Lin a long time ago, and the reason why Grandmaster Ji was able to become an origin-grade artifact refiner was thanks to the ancient ruin. Qian Tong went to explore the ancient ruin at this time because he wanted another person to take this opportunity to break through their bottleneck and become an origin-grade artifact refiner. Once that person succeeded in becoming an origin-grade artifact refiner, the initiative would once again be in Qian Tong's hands. Right, I forgot to tell you, Qian Tong also brought someone with him. That person is a Saint King-grade artifact refiner and can be regarded as Grandmaster Ji Lin's successor. Then Elder Qian is quite thoughtful. Yang Kai could not help showing a trace of admiration on his face. Good intentions? Fei Jitu sneered and said disdainfully, I think he has nothing better to do. Originally, with his means and connections, as long as he was ruthless enough, even without Grandmaster Ji Lin, he could have made Fengzhen beg for death, but instead, he chose to explore some ancient ruins far away. If that wasn't the case, then what was? Yang Kai grinned meaningfully. City Lord Fei seems to have a good relationship with Elder Qian. You don't need to comment on this City Lord's relationship with him. Fei Jitu's face turned cold. I called you here this time to ask for your help in getting Qian Tong out of the ancient ruin, lest he really die of old age there. How can this junior help in this matter? City Lord Fei, please make it clear. Since the ancient ruin can trap Qian Tong, with my insignificant cultivation, wouldn't I be courting death if I ran in? You're quite cautious. Fine, this city lord will make it clear, otherwise you won't be able to rest easy. What I am interested in is not your strength. You are indeed extraordinary, a trivial third-order Saint King being able to contend with so many origin-returning realm masters, but that is also because you are relying on external forces. The fact that you were able to withstand my blow was most likely due to the power of that artifact and artifact spirit. With your strength, you will only be a burden if you go in, but your artifact spirit is quite good, I want to borrow its power. Yang Kai curled his lips, understanding why Fei Jitu had specifically called him here so late at night. It turned out that he had taken a fancy to the artifact spirit. There is an ice road in the ancient ruin that is extremely dangerous. Your artifact spirit doesn't seem to be born from ordinary flames. Even my blue jade bowl was unable to refine its flames. With its help, this city lord can easily lead people through that ice road. Chapter 1335. Is that all? Yang Kai asked in surprise after listening to him. That's all. Fei Ji too nodded slowly. As for breaking through the ice road and rescuing Qian Tong, you don't need to worry about that, this city lord will arrange it. If not for the fact that I couldn't find a suitable fire attribute artifact to restrain the ice road, I wouldn't have stayed here for so long. Yang Kai stroked his chin and fell silent. Fei Ji too didn't urge him and simply allowed him to think about it. After all, this was a matter of great importance. Although he was only borrowing the power of the artifact spirit to break through the ice road, it was still an ancient ruin, so it was impossible to say that there wouldn't be any risk. Even a master like Qian Tong had been trapped inside, so Fei Ji too couldn't say what he would encounter on this trip. This was a matter of life and death, so of course he had to consider it carefully. However, he still had some confidence in Yang Kai. In any case, as the city lord of Heavenly Fate City, he knew a great deal about the nearby Dragon Cave Mountain. Even if he had never met Yang Kai before, he had heard many rumors about him and knew he wasn't an ungrateful villain. Sure enough, after a while, Yang Kai raised his head and a look of determination flashed across his eyes. Obviously, he had made a decision. Fei Ji too immediately turned to look at him. City Lord Fei, Elder Qian has shown kindness to my Dragon Cave Mountain. Since he is in trouble, Junior will naturally do his best to help him. Fei Ji too heard this and gently nodded, a look of satisfaction flashing across his face as he thought to himself that this little brat really understood the big picture and knew how to repay kindness. However, Yang Kai suddenly changed the subject and chuckled meaningfully, asking, "But what benefits do I get for doing this?" Benefits? Fei Ji too was stunned. Staring at Yang Kai in a daze, he asked, "You still want benefits?" Yang Kai couldn't help laughing. City Lord Fei is looking down on this junior too much. This junior has long since passed the age where he is hot-blooded and reckless. This time, his future is uncertain. City Lord Fei couldn't possibly think that he would be able to convince this junior to follow him with just a few words, right? Since I have to take the risk, of course I have to get some benefit. Fei Ji too furrowed his brows and a trace of disappointment flashed across his face. He said coldly, "But this time, the one we're going to save isn't anyone else, but Qian Tong. So what if I am? If Elder Qian had personally sent a message to me, I would have accepted it without hesitation. But now, it was you, Senior, who invited me. Since I am not familiar with you, I would have to accept it. After all, I would be able to save Elder Qian. Elder Qian also owes you a favor. It has nothing to do with me. What kind of twisted logic is this?" Fei Ji too's face was ashen. He never thought that Yang Kai would actually make a request and directly ask for benefits. This was completely different from what he had imagined. In his mind, he had already given Yang Kai a lot of face by inviting him. If the other party didn't have the fire attribute artifact spirit, with his third-order Saint King cultivation, he wouldn't have been qualified to participate in this operation. When the time came to save someone, how could Qian Tong not be grateful to him? This little brat is actually so shameless. Fei Ji too's nose became crooked from anger. Whether it is twisted logic or not, City Lord Fei will judge in his heart, Yang Kai said calmly, neither anxious nor impatient. Fei Ji too stared at him angrily for a long time before seeming to think of something. Suddenly, he smiled and said with a sly look on his face, "If you want benefits, then I'll give you benefit. Brat, did you kill Xie Hong, one of the Xie family?" Yang Kai's face changed slightly and he quickly said, "City Lord Fei, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. What evidence do you have to prove that I killed Xie Hong Wen? Don't play dumb with me." Fei Ji too coldly snorted, "Do you think others don't know about this? Do you think you did it without anyone noticing?" Yang Kai frowned, feeling that this man wasn't trying to deceive him, so he quickly put on a humble look and asked, "Please explain clearly, Senior." Fei Ji too sneered meaningfully, "Many people know about the grievances between you and Xie Hong Wen. Last time, when the Liu Yang sandfield opened, Xie Hong when deliberately brought two Xie family Saint King realm disciples to take revenge on you. Many people know about this, but after he went in, he never appeared again. Clearly, he died in the Liu Yang sand field. Liu Yang sand field is full of dangers. Even if he died inside, what does it have to do with me? Yang Kai looked indifferent as he flatly denied. Then do you know that the Shadow Moon Palace has a kind of secret technique that can be used by the elders on their juniors? Once the junior meets with any mishap, the secret technique will be transferred onto the person who inflicted the fatal blow. Not only does Xie Hongwen have this secret technique, but also the elite disciples of Wei Guchang and Dong Xiena. Do you understand what this city lord is trying to say? Yang Kai's expression was one of shock. If Fei Ji too wasn't lying to him, then he must have used this secret technique to transfer the secret technique. Yang Kai's killing of Xie Hongwen was likely no secret. There are only two reasons why the Xie family hasn't done anything to you. The first is because they fear Qian Tong, and the second is because you rarely show yourself after returning from the Liu Yang sandfield. Your Dragon Cave Mountain is filled with spirit arrays, so the Xie family's masters can't determine whether the source of this secret technique is on you or not, but as long as you leave Dragon Cave Mountain once, the fact that you killed Xie Hongwen will be exposed. Fei Ji too grinned meaningfully. As long as you follow this city lord, not only can I help you dispel the maggot-like secret technique, but I can also promise you that the Xie family will no longer cause trouble for your Dragon Cave Mountain in the future and can even restore your former trading relationship with Shadow Moon Hall. Isn't that great enough? While he was speaking, Yang Kai had already released his divine sense to check his body, and a moment later, his face became ugly. Yang Kai didn't know when, but a faint energy had appeared in his body. This energy was hidden deep within his body, and if he hadn't checked it inch by inch, it would have been impossible to discover it. Even with Fei Ji Tu's reminder, Yang Kai still had to check his body 3 times before he was able to discover the existence of this energy. It seemed that this was the secret technique of Shadow Moon Hall that could transfer the secret technique. It was really well hidden. You were able to find it? Fei Ji Tu looked at him in surprise. Although Yang Kai didn't say anything, Fei Ji Tu could see some clues from the other party's expression. This secret technique was extremely well hidden. As far as Yang Kai knew, this secret technique on Xie Hongwen was planted by Xie Li. Xie Li was a second-order origin returning realm cultivator, so even a cultivator in the same realm would not necessarily be able to discover the existence of this secret technique. So how did this third-order Saint King in front of him accomplish it? Fei Ji too couldn't help marveling, secretly wondering if the other party had used some kind of artifact to achieve this. Yang Kai didn't answer his question though, instead trying to wrap the weak energy in his demonic flame and refine it, but he quickly discovered that although this energy was very weak, it was extremely difficult to refine and would take at least a few days to completely eliminate it. However, since he had found it, Yang Kai was no longer in a hurry. After pondering for a moment, he looked at Fei Ji Tu with a solemn expression and said, "Senior's proposal just now, I agree with half of it." Half? After this matter, Dragon Cave Mountain can restore its trade relationship with Shadow Moon Hall, but the price will need to be negotiated. As for the Xie family, this junior only has one request. Let's hear it. Fei Ji Tu glanced at him. Shadow Moon Hall must not intervene in the grievances between me and the Xie family. Yang Kai shouted. Fei Ji Tu raised his brow in surprise. He had thought that Yang Kai wanted to ask Shadow Moon Hall to suppress the Xie family and prevent them from causing trouble for Dragon Cave Mountain, but how could he have known that this little brat's tone would actually be so bold? From what he had just said, it seemed he wanted to take the initiative to deal with the Xie family. After understanding this, Fei Ji Tu suddenly showed a look of interest. Although the Xie family was not a top family, it still had many origin returning realm masters, and its patriarch was even a second-order origin returning realm master. With Dragon Cave Mountain's current strength, could it really compete with them? Was this little brat still dreaming? Of course, Fei Ji Tu didn't want to pay attention to the grievances between Yang Kai and the Xie family, nor did he bother to think about whether this little brat had eaten some kind of bear's heart or leopard's gall, daring to make such wild claims. Immediately nodding, he said, "That's not a problem, as long as Qian Tong can be released, I can guarantee that even if you destroy the Xie family, Shadow Moon Hall won't say anything. Of course, that's only if you have the ability to do so. Obviously, he wasn't optimistic about Yang Kai's chances. Yang Kai didn't try to argue with him, instead deciding on a date and place to meet before leaving the City Lord's mansion alone. After Yang Kai left, Fei Ji too frowned. That's not right. Why didn't this little brat ask this City Lord to help him expel the secret technique from his body? Does he have a way? After thinking about it for a while, Fei Ji too slowly shook his head, too lazy to think about it. In any case, the Xie family already knew that Xie Hongwen had died at the hands of Yang Kai, so it didn't matter if the secret technique was expelled or not. On Dragon Cave Mountain, Yang Kai returned without alerting anyone. The date he had agreed to meet with Fei Ji too was 3 days later. After all, he still had to make some preparations and couldn't expose his whereabouts, otherwise, he might be discovered. Taking advantage of these 3 days, Yang Kai wanted to refine the weak energy in his body. Although from Fei Ji too's words, this secret technique was only used to determine who the elite disciple's murderer was, who knew if it had other uses? With such a thing in his body, Yang Kai couldn't feel at ease. Fortunately, the characteristics of his demonic flame were extraordinary, not something an ordinary cultivator's Saint Chi could compare to. Coupled with the Firebird artifact spirit, it only took 2 days for Yang Kai to completely refine this energy. After checking his body again, Yang Kai couldn't help breathing a sigh of relief. Next, Yang Kai summoned Yang Inflammation, Wu Yi, Chen Yu, Chang Qi, and Haonan carefully instructed them not to go out during this time to avoid being targeted by the Xie family. After receiving their assurances, Yang Kai returned to his cave mansion to make some preparations. In fact, there wasn't much to prepare. Yang Kai already had a lot of things, so there was nothing to prepare. On the other hand, the saint crystals he had accidentally formed were round saint crystals that had been purified and compressed by the stone mongoose and given to him by Yang Inflammation. Whether it was in terms of quality or the amount of world energy they contained, low-grade saint crystals couldn't compare with them. These saint crystals were extremely useful for recovery, healing, and even fighting. Chapter 1336. At dawn in the east, the darkest time before dawn, a figure quietly shot out from Dragon Cave Mountain and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Half an hour later, 1,000 kilometers north of Heavenly Fate City, this figure reappeared. It was Yang Kai who had come at the appointed time. Looking around for a while, Yang Kai immediately flew towards a small hill not far away. At this moment, 2 people had already arrived at the top of this hill and were sitting cross-legged in meditation. Both of them were men who didn't look very old, and surprisingly, they were only third-order Saint Kings. Yang Kai didn't hide his figure and directly flew up to this hill. As soon as he stood firm, the 2 men opened their eyes and glanced over at him faintly. One of them, who looked a little older, didn't show any intention to speak and simply closed his eyes again indifferently. The other man, on the other hand, looked at him with interest and nodded faintly. Yang Kai also nodded to him, but neither side had any intention of speaking. The mountain was not small, so while Yang Kai was suspicious in his heart, he quickly found a place to sit down cross-legged. When he heard Fei Ji too say that this operation would be dangerous, Yang Kai thought he would bring a lot of origin returning realm masters with him. After all, the other party had said that if it weren't for the power of the Firebird artifact spirit, Yang Kai wouldn't be qualified to participate in this operation. How could Yang Kai have known that as soon as he arrived at the appointed place, he would see 2 cultivator with the same cultivation as him? Although he was suspicious, Yang Kai also knew that since Fei Ji too had brought them along, he must have his own plans. These 2 either had some kind of special ability that Fei Ji too could rely on or were elites among elites. Looking at it now, the former was more likely. Atop the hill, none of the 3 made a sound and for a while, it was extremely quiet. After about half a stick of incense worth of time, Yang Kai, who was meditating, suddenly opened his eyes and stared into the distance where a streak of light was rapidly approaching. Obviously, this was another cultivator who had come to join them. Because Fei Ji too's operation this time was very confidential, everyone had split up to act, something Yang Kai had expected. After the streak of light approached and landed on the hill, a beautiful figure appeared. It was actually a woman with an enchanting figure, a pretty face, and a head of shiny black hair that was quite eye-catching. However, this woman's cultivation was actually a third-order Saint King, which puzzled young Kai. Including himself, there were 4 third-order Saint King cultivators gathered here, so where had Fei Ji-tu gone? Was he counting on these 4 Saint Kings to rescue Qian Tong? Thinking so, young Kai's face sank. However, after the woman landed, she was surprised to find that the 3 best spots here had already been occupied, causing her brow to furrow. The man who had expressed his friendliness to young Kai before stood up happily and cupped his fists. So it is Sister Sai Sai. It has been a year since we last met. I trust Sister Sai Sai has been well since we last met. Listening to his tone, he seemed to know this woman, and looking at his expression, it seemed he was quite interested in her. The woman named Sai Sai glanced at him and said indifferently, "Cai he? You actually came?" City Lord Fei's vision is not very good, even inviting an array master like you. It seems the future of this trip is uncertain. Despite being ridiculed by her, the man named Cai he did not show the slightest annoyance and simply said, "In fact, City Lord Fei invited my father before, but unfortunately, my father is in retreat and cannot go out, so I have come in his place. I'm afraid I will have to cooperate with Sister Sai Sai on this trip, so I hope Sister Sai Sai will not be stingy." Me. The woman named Sai Sai coldly snorted, her pretty face filled with arrogance. "I wouldn't dare. Although your Cai family's research on the Tao of Spirit Arrays is not as good as my Du family's, you still have some unique points. Just don't drag me down this time." Of course. Cai he still had a grin on his face, as if he had no backbone at all, causing the other man to show a look of disdain. After listening to their conversation, young Kai understood why Fei Ji-tu had brought these 2 third-order Saint Kings. It turned out that these 2 were quite knowledgeable about the Tao of Spirit Arrays. It seemed that Fei Ji-tu had made some preparations. Du Sai Sai then looked at the indifferent man and young Kai and asked arrogantly, "Who are these 2? Did they also come here at City Lord Fei's invitation? How come their cultivations are the same as ours?" Du Sai Sai looked down on Saint King realm cultivators, causing young Kai to frown, knowing that this woman was a proud and arrogant person. Cai he smiled awkwardly. "This brother doesn't know the origins of these 2, but if you don't mind, why don't you introduce yourselves? In any case, we will all be traveling together, so familiarizing ourselves with one another will be beneficial to our future cooperation." Compared with Du Sai Sai, this Cai his temperament was much gentler. When he spoke to Du Sai Sai, he was gentle and refined, and when he asked about young Kai and the other man, he also had a smile on his face, giving off a sense of closeness. Lian Guang, the indifferent man, was a man of few words and didn't say anything else after reporting his name. Surnamed Lian. Du Sai Sai and Cai his expressions couldn't help changing slightly after hearing Lian Guang's name, as if the other party's surname had some kind of profound origin. Young Kai also couldn't help glancing over at him curiously. Because the Lian family was very famous in this region, even on all of Shadowed Star, its fame was no less than that of an average sect. Even someone as ignorant and inexperienced as young Kai had heard of it. It was easy to imagine just how great this family's reputation was. The Lian family wasn't very powerful and didn't have many members. It was said that the entire family only had 100 or so members, and the strongest one was only a first-order origin returning realm cultivator. There were at least 800 such families on Shadowed Star, if not 1,000, but only the Lian family was widely known. The reason was simple: the Lian family was proficient in the art of puppetry. It was said that the Lian family was proficient in refining and controlling puppets. Their cultivation may not be very high, but their combat power was far superior to that of a cultivator of the same realm because they had countless puppets in their hands to assist them in battle. Once they started fighting, it would be a spectacular scene of several of them fighting one another, or even a dozen of them fighting at once. Moreover, it was said that the Lian family also had several strongest puppets that were comparable to third-order origin returning realm cultivators. The existence of these puppets alone was enough to deter many juniors. Once, there was a clan whose strength far surpassed the Lian clan. They coveted the Lian clan's puppet refining technique and wanted to exterminate the Lian clan in order to seize the secret technique of refining puppets. Unfortunately, even after exhausting the entire clan's strength, they were still unable to succeed. In the end, they were eliminated by the Lian clan. It was also during that battle that the Lian family's reputation was spread far and wide. Several of their puppets, which were comparable to third-order origin returning realm masters, shone in that battle and killed countless enemies, causing many people to covet their treasures and fear them. The Lian family was also smart and knew that an ordinary man's wealth was his own ruin. Since then, they had sought the support of the Shadow Moon Hall and refined some puppets for the Shadow Moon Hall free of charge every year. Under the protection of the Shadow Moon Hall, the Lian family had remained stable until now, and no one dared to have any ideas about them. So, after hearing Lian Guang's self-introduction, Du Sai Sai and Cai he were taken aback. The two of them came from quite a big family and could be considered famous because they were proficient in the Tao of spirit arrays, but compared to the Lian family, their reputation was far worse. Yang Kai showed a thoughtful look. Fei Ji too wanted to bring Du Sai Sai and Cai he with him to break the barriers and spirit arrays in the ancient ruins, which was understandable. But why did he bring someone from the Lian family with him? After Lian Guang reported his name, he didn't say anything else, as if he was a naturally reticent person. After Du Sai Sai and Cai he came back to their senses, they turned to look at Yang Kai together, but after Yang Kai reported his name, their expressions suddenly became strange. Cai he looked at Yang Kai from head to toe and said in surprise, "Brother Yang, you wouldn't be the one who made a ruckus in Sky Fortune City a few days ago, right?" Yang Kai chuckled and said, "If there isn't a second person who made a ruckus in Sky Fortune City, then it should be me." Cai he was immediately shocked by Yang Kai's words. Even Du Sai Sai's arrogant expression was restrained. Not only that, Lian Guang even opened his eyes and looked at Yang Kai again. Although the families of the three of them weren't weak, none of them had the guts to go to Sky Fortune City and commit murder and arson. What was even more bizarre was that this guy was not only unharmed after committing murder and arson, he was even invited by Fei Ji too to participate in this operation. This surprised the three of them. They didn't know what kind of agreement Yang Kai and Fei Ji too had reached that the latter didn't hold him accountable. However, the three of them knew that some things were better kept a secret, so they didn't get to the bottom of it. However, after learning about Yang Kai's identity, Cai he and Yang Kai felt like old friends at first sight and no longer kept silent like before. Instead, they started chatting and laughing with each other. After chatting for a while, Yang Kai understood why Cai his attitude had changed so much. It turned out that the Cai family and Xie family had many conflicts and had even suffered a few losses at the hands of the Xie family. Last time, Yang Kai killed an origin returning realm master from the Xie family in Sky Fortune City. After this news spread, many families and cultivator who had a grudge against the Xie family clapped their hands and cheered, including the Cai family. Yang Kai killing Xie Quan was tantamount to helping them vent their anger, so how could they not be happy? As a member of the Cai family, Cai he naturally found Yang Kai quite pleasing to the eye. As for Du Sai Sai, she found a place to sit down casually and closed her eyes to adjust her breathing. After waiting for about half an hour, several figures suddenly and strangely appeared on the hill. This startled the three Saint King Realm Masters except for Yang Kai. Only Yang Kai had a strong divine sense and was able to detect them, so his expression was calm. After seeing that the person who came was Fei Ji too, Cai he and the others breathed a sigh of relief and stepped forward to cup their fists and salute. Chapter 1337. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yang Kai took a look at the cultivator who had arrived with Fei Ji too. Of the three origin returning realm masters, one was a middle-aged man about the same age as Fei Ji too and was a second-order origin returning realm cultivator, while the other two were first-order origin returning realm cultivators, an old man and an old woman. However, although these two were only first-order origin returning realm cultivators, their auras were quite deep and profound, unlike those who had just broken through to the origin returning realm. They should have been immersed in this realm for many years and possessed profound cultivation. The appearance of these origin-returning realm masters made Yang Kai feel a little relieved. It seemed that Fei Ji too was not unprepared, and in the current situation, secretly gathering so many origin-returning realm masters was definitely not an easy task. After all, the rescue of Qian Tong was presided over by him, so it was not convenient for him to transfer manpower from Shadow Moon Hall. At the same time, he also had to conceal this operation from the public. Having so many origin-returning realm masters participating in this operation was already beyond Yang Kai's expectations. What's more, with a third-order origin-returning realm master leading the team, there shouldn't be any problems in terms of safety. The only thing he needed to worry about was whether there were any dangers hidden in the ancient ruins. After a few words with Cai He and the others, Fei Ji too smiled and said, "It seems that you little brats already know each other. That's good too. On this trip, all of you will need to contribute, so it's better for you to get to know each other first. Whether this trip succeeds or not, this city lord will remember this favor. When you return, tell your patriarchs that if they need this Fei's help in the future, just let me know." Cai He, Du Sai Sai, and Lian Guang heard this and showed a touch of joy at the same time as they hurriedly expressed their thanks. "Good, since everyone is here, let's go." Fei Ji too waved his hand and summoned an origin-grade low-rank star shuttle before leading the way. Yang Kai thought that Yang Kai was going to introduce the other 3 origin-returning realm masters to him and the others, but the other party had no intention of doing so at all. After being stunned for a moment, he also summoned his star shuttle and followed. When he was chatting with Cai He before, Yang Kai had learned from him that this trip to the ancient ruins was to rescue Qian Tong. But as for where this ancient ruin was, Fei Ji too did not reveal anything. Now that everyone had gathered, he still showed no intention of explaining himself. Yang could not help cursing in his heart, but he did not take the initiative to ask and instead just follow behind him. The 3 origin-returning realm masters who came with Fei Ji too all seemed to be very interested in Yang Kai, glancing at him from time to time with their divine senses. This was especially true for the old man. When Yang Kai could not help but look back, the old man actually smiled and nodded in an amiable manner, making Yang Kai quite puzzled. He had no idea what kind of medicine this old man was trying to sell. Although the second-order origin-returning realm cultivator and the old woman did not show such obvious goodwill, there was still a hint of intimacy between them. Although he understood that these 3 people didn't have any malicious intentions towards him, Yang Kai still felt a little apprehensive, so he didn't say anything and just hurried along. For him, it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. He had many things to attend to right now, and if it weren't for Qian Tong encountering trouble this time, he wouldn't have left Dragon Cave Mountain and would have instead gone into retreat to continue cultivating his various secret techniques. Especially since the Firebird artifact spirit had awakened, the efficiency of refining the dragon bone and dragon bead had greatly increased. Originally, it would have taken him several years to completely refine the dragon bone and dragon bead, but now, the time required had been greatly reduced. Yang Kai could not wait to enter retreat and stimulate the power of the artifact refining furnace to fully refine these 2 treasures. The group of 8 remained silent. At first, Cai He had tried to curry favor with Du Sai Sai, but after being rebuffed, he tactfully chose not to annoy the beautiful woman. After flying forward for 4 days, when a rolling mountain range appeared in front of them, Fei Ji too suddenly turned around and flew down. The remaining 7 naturally followed closely behind. A moment later, the group landed on the outskirts of this mountain range. Fei Ji too took out a yellowed animal skin map from his space ring and studied it carefully. "Isn't this Fallen Emperor Mountain?" Cai He asked in surprise. Could it be that the ancient ruins are hidden in this Fallen Emperor Mountain? That can't be, right? Countless people come to Fallen Emperor Mountain every year. Even you and I have come here a few times. If there really was an ancient ruin, how could there not be any news about it? Du Sai Sai slowly shook her head. While the 2 were talking, Yang Kai was observing the so-called Fallen Emperor Mountain. This was the first time he had heard of this mountain range and also the first time he had come here, so naturally, he had no right to speak. Looking around, Yang Kai could only feel that this mountain range stretched for countless kilometers and was lush and verdant, but what was strange was that this mountain range was completely silent, not even the sound of insects or birds could be heard. Yang Kai also couldn't see any beasts or birds, causing him to feel somewhat puzzled. Haha, is this little friend's first time coming to Fallen Emperor Mountain? Just as Yang Kai was feeling puzzled, the old man suddenly came up to him, stroked his white beard, and asked with a smile. Ian, this is indeed Junior's first time here. Yang Kai frowned, not understanding why this old man took the initiative to speak to him. No wonder, this old man is Ning Xiong Chen. The old man suddenly changed the topic and introduced himself with a smile. While Yang Kai was suspicious in his heart, he had no choice but to greet this old man politely. After all, this old man was much older than him. This was not the end of it though. The old man Ning Xiong Chen pointed to the other old woman and the second-order origin returning realm master and introduced them to Yang Kai. Both of them also greeted Yang Kai with a smile on their faces, repeatedly praising the younger generation's abilities. Seeing several origin returning realm masters take the initiative to express goodwill naturally surprised Cai he and the others, none of them understanding why Yang Kai could win the favor of so many masters. Du Sai even wore a look of disdain, as if she felt that all the limelight had been stolen by Yang Kai. Several seniors, is there anything special about this Fallen Emperor Mountain? Yang Kai took advantage of their pause to quickly change the subject. By now, he could see that these three origin returning realm masters probably had something they wanted from him, otherwise, they wouldn't have taken the initiative to show goodwill. But no matter what they wanted to help him with, and all of them had such intentions, it was definitely going to be troublesome for him, so Yang Kai wasn't going to let them change the topic. Hearing this question, Ning Xiong Chen's expression suddenly became solemn and instead of answering, he asked, "Do you know why this place is called Fallen Emperor Mountain?" Yang Kai frowned and pondered for a while before asking suspiciously, "Could it be that this place has something to do with the legendary Great Emperors of Starfield?" Ning Xiong Chen couldn't help showing a look of approval on his face while the old woman next to him also smiled and said, "Ian, this place is indeed related to the Great Emperors of Starfield because it is rumored that this place is where the Great Emperors fell." Yang Kai's face changed as he cried out involuntarily, "Is that true?" Ning Xiong Chen chuckled, "Whether it is true or not, no one can confirm, but in this Fallen Emperor Mountain, there is a trace of emperor pressure that is well known to the world." Emperor pressure? Yang Kai frowned. As you can see, there are no birds or beasts in this Fallen Emperor Mountain. It's not that this place isn't suitable for them to live, it's just that this place is filled with beautiful scenery and rich in world energy. It's not impossible for some sects to establish their base here, but not only is there no sect here, there isn't even a monster beast because of the emperor pressure in Fallen Emperor Mountain. This invisible emperor pressure shrouds the entire Fallen Emperor Mountain, and the closer to its center, the stronger it becomes. The birds and beasts here can't live under this emperor pressure for a long time, which is why you can't see it. Ian, a long time ago, Fallen Emperor Mountain was also fancied by a powerful sect that wanted to establish its foundation here, but even a third-order origin returning realm master couldn't stay inside Fallen Emperor Mountain for too long. Under the subtle influence of the emperor pressure, no matter how strong one was, they would eventually go mad and suffer a tragic fate. The old woman took over and explained, "Is this emperor pressure really that amazing?" Yang Kai was surprised. "Don't underestimate this emperor pressure. I also came here to cultivate in the past, and if I hadn't withdrawn in time, I'm afraid I would have become the demon race," the second-order origin returning realm master said seriously. "You can cultivate here?" Yang Kai's eyes lit up. Haha, that's what this old man was going to tell little friend. Ian, the emperor pressure in Fallen Emperor Mountain is not suitable for any living creature to stay here for a long time. On top of that, the closer one is to the center of Fallen Emperor Mountain, the stronger the emperor pressure becomes. No one knows what lies at the center of Fallen Emperor Mountain, but this place is quite suitable for tempering one's spiritual energy. Therefore, every year, many cultivators come to Fallen Emperor Mountain specifically to use the emperor pressure here to cultivate their spiritual energy. Not only that, but the emperor pressure also has a great effect on one's comprehension of Sha. This old man can see that little friend's aptitude is extraordinary and that he will one day break through to the origin returning realm. When that time comes, you might as well come to Star Emperor Mountain to comprehend Sha. When that time comes, you will naturally find that cultivating here will yield twice the results with half the effort. Basically, 6 out of 10 origin returning realm masters on Shadowed Star have come to Star Emperor Mountain to condense their Sha, and although no one has ever verified it, the Sha condensed in Star Emperor Mountain is much stronger than what one can comprehend under normal circumstances. Little friend should not miss out on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in the future. Is there such a good thing? Yang Kai was surprised and quickly cupped his fists. Many thanks for enlightening me, 3 seniors. When that day comes, this junior will definitely come to Star Emperor Mountain to temper his Sha. Although even if these 3 didn't remind him, Yang Kai would definitely learn about this from other sources. In the end, these were all people's good intentions, so Yang Kai had to express his gratitude. Of course. Ning Xiong Chen chuckled. When the time comes, if little friend needs someone to escort him, feel free to inform this old master. This old master will definitely do his best. Not only did Ning Xiong Chen say this, but the old woman and the other second-order origin returning realm cultivator also said the same, causing Yang Kai's heart to clench as he felt more and more that they had something to ask of him. Immediately, he said he wouldn't dare. Chapter 1338. While the group was talking, Feiji too seemed to have understood something, and after putting away the animal skin blueprint, his figure flickered and he flew into Fallen Emperor Mountain. Haha, little friend should go first. This old master will bring up the rear. Right, try not to resist the Emperor pressure in Fallen Emperor Mountain, just try to comprehend it silently, Ning Xiong Chen kindly exhorted again. Many thanks for senior's reminder. Yang Kai gently nodded before rushing into Fallen Emperor Mountain with Cai He, Du Sai Sai, and Lian Guang. After the 4 Saint Kings entered, Ning Xiong Chen and the other 2 origin returning realm masters followed behind. In Fallen Emperor Mountain, it was true that one would not encounter any beasts or venomous snakes, but here, one would often encounter some crazy cultivators who would attack indiscriminately. These cultivators had come to Fallen Emperor Mountain to cultivate, but for various reasons, they had stayed here for too long, causing their minds to be overwhelmed by the Emperor pressure and falling into a state of madness. Every year, countless cultivator would come here, and accidents would occur quite frequently in Fallen Emperor Mountain. In addition, there were also some cultivator with evil intentions who would use this place as a good place to kill and plunder. However, there were 4 origin returning realm masters in Yang Kai's group of 8, and with a master like Feiji Tu leading the way, there was no need for them to worry about encountering such problems. As soon as he stepped into Fallen Emperor Mountain, Yang Kai felt an invisible force envelop his body. Under this pressure, the circulation of his Saint Chi suddenly became somewhat sluggish, and when he released his divine sense, he was only able to detect a few thousand meters around him. Under the influence of the Emperor pressure, his divine sense was suppressed to such an extent. Yang Kai could not help feeling a little creeped out. This Emperor pressure was everywhere, as if there was a pair of eyes staring at him, observing his movements. This made Yang Kai feel very uncomfortable, as if he was being watched. This was just a trace of Emperor pressure. If the great emperors of Starfield really descended, just how terrifying would they be? By now, Yang Kai no longer doubted whether the great emperors of Starfield really existed. The 2-star Emperor tokens he obtained were rumored to have been left behind by the great emperors of Starfield. Star Emperor Mountain was also rumored to have some relationship with the great emperors of Starfield, and the same was true for Fallen Emperor Mountain. Nothing was without wind, nothing, so it was likely that the great emperors of Starfield really did exist. In the face of this Emperor pressure, Yang Kai instinctively wanted to resist, but remembering Ning Xiong Chen's kind reminder and observing Cai He and the others, he found that they were all calm and collected, so he simply held his breath and turned a blind eye to this situation. This was still the outermost perimeter, so the Emperor pressure was not too strong. Even if they did not resist, it would not cause any harm. Following Feiji Tu all the way, Yang Kai did not encounter any cultivator along the way. Feiji Tu could perfectly lead everyone around the field of vision and divine sense coverage of any cultivator who came here to cultivate. After all, this operation was extremely confidential, and Feiji Tu did not want to complicate matters. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. As they went deeper and deeper into Fallen Emperor Mountain, The emperor pressure that shrouded the area became much stronger, but Yang Kai was not alarmed. Instead, he was happy because in just 2 days, he felt that his spiritual energy had strengthened. Under the subtle influence of the emperor pressure, his knowledge sea had also become clearer and purer. This was really a good place to cultivate one's soul. Yang Kai didn't need to do anything at all, just by staying here, he was able to reap such benefits. If he really found a place here to cultivate his soul or soul skills, it would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. Unfortunately, the emperor pressure of Fallen Emperor Mountain was only suitable for a cultivator to temper their spiritual energy. Other than that, it could only be used to condense one's sha, so its effect was somewhat limited. If this weren't the case, this place would definitely become a cultivation holy land, and the great forces on Shadowed Star would likely fight over the ownership of this place. After walking for another 3 days, Yang Kai faintly began to feel some difficulty. The reason was simple: although the emperor pressure here could purify a cultivator's knowledge sea and strengthen their spiritual energy, this kind of forceful and unilateral purification put a certain amount of pressure on the cultivator themselves. If they were unable to withstand this pressure, it would inevitably affect their mind. Yang Kai was in a relatively good situation. Until now, he hadn't resisted the emperor pressure and had instead been silently comprehending the various mysteries contained in this emperor pressure according to Ning Xiongchen's instructions. The other 3 saint kings, on the other hand, couldn't do the same. As early as yesterday, all of them had simultaneously pushed their spiritual energy to resist the invasion of the emperor pressure. Comparing the two, it was obvious who had higher spiritual energy cultivation. This scene not only surprised Cai He and the others, but also Ning Xiongchen and the others. One had to know that although Cai He and the other 2 were third-order saint kings like Yang Kai, 2 of them were proficient in the Tao of spirit arrays while the other was proficient in refining and controlling puppets. No matter which one it was, the requirements for one's spiritual energy were extremely harsh, especially the Lian family's puppetry techniques. Lian Guang could control up to 100 puppets in battle, each of which was attached to his divine sense, so the requirements for his spiritual energy were even more terrifying than studying spirit arrays. It could be said that the spiritual energy of these 3 people far surpassed that of a cultivator in the same realm. But now, compared with Yang Kai, they were still slightly inferior. How could they not be surprised? All of them secretly wondered what kind of secret art Yang Kai had cultivated that allowed him to have such a powerful spiritual energy. Of course, Yang Kai didn't know about this. He just felt that if he tried to resist, the benefits he could obtain here would be greatly reduced, so he decided to open his mind and focus on perceiving the emperor pressure. After Du Sai noticed this, she immediately showed a look of unwillingness. After all, since she began cultivating, because of her focus on spirit arrays, the strength of her spiritual energy had always been much higher than that of a cultivator in the same realm, but now, in front of Yang Kai, she was forced to accept this. Gritting her teeth, she steeled her heart and released the defenses of her knowledge sea. It wasn't until her face turned slightly pale that He noticed something was wrong and quickly stepped forward to ask if she was all right, but he was met with another cold shoulder. Helpless, he could only smile bitterly. In front of them was a swamp. Fei Ji too stared at this swamp with a dignified expression before taking out the animal skin blueprint and comparing it to the one before him. A moment later, he shouted, "We're almost there. It's right here, all of you keep up." Hearing him say this, everyone's spirits were lifted and they quickly kept up with his pace. This swamp in Fallen Emperor Mountain was, strictly speaking, a huge mountain valley. No one knew why this swamp was formed here, but the ubiquitous miasma and puddles made it rare for cultivators to set foot here. After all, the cultivators who came here all wanted to temper their spiritual energy and find a comfortable place to cultivate, so who would be willing to come to such a place to suffer? Following behind Fei Ji too, the group walked for half a day before Fei Ji too suddenly stopped and stared at a huge puddle in front of him. "Is this the place?" Ning Xiongchen stepped forward and stood side by side with Fei Ji too and asked. According to the message from old Ghost Qian, this should be the place, but we'll need to do something. Saying so, Fei Ji too took out a bead and immediately spat it out before throwing it towards the center of the puddle. Under everyone's attention, when the bead fell into the puddle, it immediately began to ripple, as if something was stirring up the water below. Moreover, strands of white cold air suddenly appeared. In an instant, the temperature within a radius of 1,000 feet suddenly dropped. Catcher, with a series of cracking sounds, the huge puddle of water froze into ice at a speed visible to the naked eye. Only a straight passage was left in the middle. It was so dark that the bottom could not be seen, and no one knew where it led to. Yang Kai released his divine sense but had no way to explore the bottom. After waiting for a while, when the cracking sounds stopped and the channel stabilized completely, Feiji Tu shouted, "Let's go in. Brother Ning, you bring up the rear, I'll take these kids down first." "Good," Ning Xiongchen gently nodded. Feiji Tu glanced over at Yang Kai and the others, but after seeing the pale and sweaty Du Sai Sai, he couldn't help frowning as a trace of displeasure appeared on his face. How could he not see that Du Sai Sai was sulking over herself? This operation was of great importance, and if it weren't for the fact that he couldn't find a good array master, he wouldn't have asked this little girl to help. With a burst of blue light, Feiji Tu wrapped Yang Kai and the others in his Saint Chi and immediately leapt down into the channel. After an unknown amount of time, Yang Kai estimated that he and the others had fallen at least 1,000 meters before suddenly landing on solid ground. The sound of flowing water rang out in their ears, and under the illumination of the blue light, Yang Kai looked around and discovered that he was actually standing next to an underground river. Furthermore, as soon as he arrived here, the emperor might that had been enveloping him all the time actually disappeared. There's actually such a place underground. He also looked around in amazement, obviously not having expected there to be such a place under fallen Emperor Mountain. If the ancient ruins were so easy to find, they would have been turned upside down a long time ago. Old Ghost Chen wouldn't even have a chance to find them. Feiji Tu coldly snorted before glancing over at Du Sai Sai and saying, "You take a break, if this happens again next time, you don't need to follow us into the ancient ruins." Du Sai Sai bit her red lips lightly and nodded. Although she was proud and arrogant, she didn't dare disobey Feiji Tu. After waiting for a while, Ning Xiongchen and the others also arrived here, and after the 8 of them gathered again, they rested for a while. Yang Kai, on the other hand, stared in a certain direction silently. He didn't know if it was an illusion or not, but he felt that there was an ancient and desolate aura coming from that direction. This aura was indescribable, but it had a certain charm to it. Feiji Tu saw Yang Kai staring in that direction and couldn't help raising his brow, because the direction they were heading in was precisely that direction. He didn't know if Yang Kai had discovered something. Chapter 1339. About half an hour later, after everyone had recovered, Feiji Tu called out, "Let's go." Saying so, he walked along the underground riverbed towards the direction Yang Kai had just been staring at. As they ventured deeper, the ancient and desolate aura that Yang Kai had felt before became more and more intense. Even he and the others were aware of it. Exchanging glances with one another, they couldn't help seeing the excitement in each other's eyes. Something that could exude such an aura was clearly extremely old. These people had all gone out many times and were extremely sensitive to this kind of aura. It seemed that there really was an ancient ruin here. Although they understood that Feiji Tu would not deceive them, as they approached their destination, everyone could not help but look forward to it. This time, rescuing the Qian Tong was naturally the most important thing for them, but if they could go deep into the ancient ruin and fish up some benefits, that would be more than welcome. Especially in this kind of ruin where almost no one had set foot, there would definitely be many good things. But a moment later, when a space array appeared in front of everyone, everyone was stunned. Because the desolate aura Yang Kai felt before was emitted by this space array, and looking at the appearance of this space array, it seemed to be somewhat different from the ones on Shadowed Star. Although it was generally the same, there were still many subtle differences. Yang Kai had seen many space arrays before and had even cultivated the Tao of space himself, so he immediately understood that this space array should have been left behind from a long time ago. That was why it was different from the current space arrays on Shadowed Star. After all, over the years, many of the space arrays on Shadowed Star had been repaired and modified. At this moment, in the several pits at the base of the space array, there were several pieces of high-rank Saint crystal that had lost their energy, obviously having been consumed to open the space array. Fei Ji too picked up a piece of discarded Saint crystal and examined it for a moment before nodding. Old Qian should have been teleported to the ancient ruin through this space array. These Saint crystals were used not long ago. In that case, let's go in. Ning Xiong Chen hurriedly said. Fei Ji too slowly shook his head. We definitely have to go in, but we don't know what's on the other side of the space array. The information that old Qian sent back was too vague. It's already fortunate that I was able to find this place. However, since the ancient ruins could trap him, the inside must be extraordinary. After you guys go in, don't act rashly and follow us closely. If there is any danger, we will naturally deal with it. Do you understand? He and the others naturally didn't dare to refute and hurriedly agreed. Seeing the four Saint Kings acting obediently, Fei Ji too nodded with satisfaction. With a wave of his hand, he placed a number of high-rank Saint crystals into the groove at the base of the spirit array before pushing his Saint Qi to envelop everyone and bring them into the space array. In the next moment, the space formation flickered, and the 8 of them disappeared from the spot amidst a series of buzzing sounds. When the 8 of them reappeared, they were already in a different place. Just as they stood still, Fei Ji too and the other Origin returning realm masters released their divine senses and vigilantly scanned their surroundings while secretly circulating their Saint Qi, preparing to take action at a moment's notice. After determining that there was no danger nearby, Fei Ji too and the others relaxed and began to examine their surroundings. Yang Kai also took the opportunity to observe his surroundings, and after a while, he could not help showing a strange look because he discovered that after passing through the space array, the place they had arrived at was actually a strange space. At this moment, the world energy aura here seemed to be much richer than outside. Even the current Dragon Cave mountain couldn't compare. Moreover, the sky was blue and filled with white clouds while the sun hung high in the sky. And the place where they were at was actually in the middle of a large group of buildings. This place seemed to be the location of some sect. However, Yang Kai's divine sense told him that besides the 8 of them, there were no other living beings here. Are these ancient ruins? Ning Xiong Chen and the others couldn't help exchanging glances, showing a trace of suspicion. There's no need to doubt, these are indeed ancient ruins. Fei Ji too replied in a deep voice, seemingly having discovered something as he pointed forward. These characters have evolved on Shadowed Star and were only used tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years ago. Following the direction he pointed, everyone turned their eyes to a loft not far away. The construction of this loft was quite exquisite, and there was a plaque hanging on the second floor. Written on this plaque were a few large characters that were quite charming, but no matter how the 8 of them looked at it, they couldn't understand what these characters were. Even Fei Ji too couldn't recognize them. In addition, there were some other lofts and buildings that also had plaques engraved with characters, but without exception, none of them were able to recognize these characters. Sure enough, these are ancient ruins, and they're actually so well preserved. Ning Xiong Chen looked excited, his face turning ruddy, as did the old woman and the second-order Origin returning realm cultivator. It wasn't that ancient ruins had never been discovered on Shadowed Star, but none had been so well preserved. Since they were well preserved, it meant that the treasures inside were still undiscovered. As long as they rescued Qian Tong, they would have plenty of time to explore this place. Thinking so, the several Origin returning realm masters' hearts began to heat up. First, we need to find old Ghost Qian. As for these ruins, it won't be too late to explore them later. Fei Ji too finally understood the importance of this matter, so after giving this order, everyone nodded. After all, in this place, he was the strongest, and Ning Xiong Chen and the others had a good relationship with him, so naturally, they wouldn't refute him. Immediately, Fei Ji too began to explore the marks left behind by Qian Tong. Fortunately, Qian Tong was very cautious and had left behind many marks along the way after entering these ancient ruins. Otherwise, even if Fei Ji too wanted to find him, he wouldn't have been able to do so. After a short while, Fei Ji too determined a direction and began walking towards it. Everyone followed behind him, looking at the rooms and lofts they passed by, all of them sighing. If it weren't for the fact that they had to rescue Qian Tong, they would have already gone deep into these buildings to search. With so many rooms and lofts, there was bound to be something good inside. But right now, they could only force themselves not to think about it. After about a stick of incense worth of time, to everyone's surprise, everything was peaceful. There didn't seem to be any danger inside these ancient ruins, but the more this was the case, the more dignified everyone's expression became. Suddenly, a strange medicinal fragrance wafted into everyone's nostrils, causing everyone to look shocked. In an instant, it was as if they had been enlightened. This is. Ning Xiongchen's eyes bulged as he pointed. The fragrance is coming from up ahead. Fei Zhitu's expression also brightened and he couldn't help quickening his pace. Something that could produce such a strange fragrance was definitely something good, so he naturally wanted to see what it was. A moment later, everyone stopped in front of a flower bed. There were many exotic flowers and grasses planted in this flower bed, but most of them didn't have any substantial effect and were only there for people to admire. Only in the middle of the flower bed was a single stalk of purple grass that was about a meter tall and as straight as a sword, attracting everyone's attention. The fragrance everyone had smelled before was emitted by this purple grass. Sword soul grass. And it's actually purple. Old man Ning Xiongchen exclaimed as he stared at the purple grass with a burning gaze. Not only him, but even Fei Zhitu couldn't hide the excitement on his face. Sword soul grass was the main ingredient for refining a kind of pill called sword soul pill. It was most suitable for a cultivator who cultivated the sword Dao divine technique to consume, as it could increase the cultivator's comprehension and control of sword intent, greatly increasing the power of the sword Dao divine technique they displayed. The sword soul grass itself was an origin grade mid-rank herb and was one of the rarest spirit grasses on Shadowed Star. On top of that, even when a sword soul grass matured, it would only be a light blue color, but if it aged long enough, its color would gradually deepen. This purple sword soul grass was at least 10,000 years old, so its preciousness and rarity could be imagined. If this sword soul grass was refined into a pill and given to a cultivator who cultivated the sword Dao divine technique to consume, the benefits they would obtain would be difficult to estimate. This was definitely a priceless and precious spirit grass. It would also be of great use to Fei Zhitu and the other origin returning realm masters. Although none of them majored in the sword Dao, each of them had at least dabbled in this field and had mastered some sword Dao martial skills, so naturally, they had a desire for sword soul grass. Even if they didn't use it themselves, they could still exchange it for many good things. Brother Fei. Ning Xiongchen turned to look at Fei Zhitu. Although this treasure was very valuable, it wasn't enough to make them enemies. What's more, they had only just arrived at this ancient ruin and had already made such a discovery. As long as they stayed here for a while longer, they wouldn't have to worry about not finding anything good. So, Ning Xiongchen called out to Fei Zhitu, wanting to hear his opinion on how to deal with this sword soul grass. Everyone didn't rashly explore the pavilions and rooms to avoid unnecessary trouble, but now that something good had appeared in front of them, there was no reason to let it go. If you trust this Fei Zhitu, I will take care of this sword soul grass. After we leave, we can discuss it in detail, Fei Zhitu said loudly. This old woman has no objection. The old woman immediately expressed her stance. We trust City Lord Fei's character, so let's do as you say. The other second-order origin returning realm cultivator also nodded in agreement. Naturally, Ning Xiongchen didn't object. Seeing that the discussion was complete, Fei Zhitu immediately took out a jade shovel and walked over to the sword soul grass, seemingly intending to pick it up by the roots. Brother Yang, why do you have such a dignified expression? Cai he suddenly leaned over to Yang Kai and asked. He inadvertently noticed that Yang Kai's brow was furrowed, as if he had something on his mind, so he couldn't help asking with concern. Yang Kai turned a deaf ear to his question, his brow furrowed tightly for a moment before a look of understanding flashed across his face and he suddenly shouted, "No, this isn't a sword soul grass, City Lord Fei, stop." Cai he was taken aback and quickly looked towards Fei Zhitu, but Yang Kai's words were too late. Fei Zhitu's jade shovel had already dug into the soil in the flower bed. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.